Chapter 252. Forgetting each other is better than being together. Being heartless is being sentimental. A personal jade pendant, thrown into the lake to remember the past. Xiao Qi looked at the two lines of words on the paper and slowly stroked the white jade pendant. Tears streamed down from her eyes. She gritted her teeth to stop herself from crying. Her body trembled even more violently. Uffed. The jade pendant drew a curve in the air and fell into the lake, slowly sinking. Uffed. Xiao Qi spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed. Shininghu caught her and sighed. She had finally taken this step. She really did not know what the future held. Chu Li exited the ravine under the moonlight. He walked down step by step without using his light body technique. With every step he took, he was further away from Snow Lunar Pavilion. His heart felt heavier, as if there was an invisible boulder pressing on his heart. The more it pressed, the harder it was to breathe. In the end, he still left the mountain gate. He entered a dense forest, took off his blue shirt, and changed into a white robe. He suddenly looked more spirited and elegant. Under the moonlight, he stepped on the treetops and looked back at the towering peaks. He did not know when he would return to Snow Lunar Pavilion after this. His white robe fluttered as he turned to leave. His emotions were complicated. He felt lost, melancholy, and pain. Unknowingly, he moved faster and faster. He ran nonstop for an entire night, but he still could not relax. When the first ray of sunlight from the east shone on him, he activated the omniscient mirror and suppressed his turbulent thoughts. He made a decision. No matter what, he had to enter the enlightened mastery's boundary. When he passed by a forest, he suddenly stopped and turned his head to look behind him. Come out! 3 figures floated out of the forest like ghosts. One was Zhou Ziqing. He did not know the other 2, but they looked similar to Feng Qiliang. He guessed that the 3 were related by blood. He frowned. Greenhill? Zhou Ziqing sighed. Du Feng, you killed Brother Feng. He shook his head and could not continue. He had personally said that he would settle all grudges with one palm. He would not pester him anymore. He never thought that he would break his promise so soon. This made him feel embarrassed. He had nothing to say. Chu Li was suppressing his anger and wanted to vent. He said coldly, "Who are these 2? Oh, they are Feng Qiliang's eldest brother and second brother." Hey! He then activated the omniscient mirror to its limit and scoffed coldly. Don't tell me you're like your younger brother, who likes to torture and kill young girls. His expression became increasingly gloomy as he sneered. Very well, jackals of the same tribe. The scene in their minds was like adding oil to the fire, causing his killing intent to surge. Zhou Ziqing sighed. Big senior brother Feng, second senior brother Feng, since you've recognized me, I should leave too. Let's go. An old man waved his hand and snorted coldly. Spineless. He killed someone from Greenhill, yet you let him go just like that. Why are you still keeping your promise? You're really pedantic. Zhou Ziqing's face turned red, but he still said, Senior brother Feng, a man's words carry enormous weight. I can't go back on my words. Get lost. The other old man waved his hand impatiently. Just keep your promise. Scram, don't be an eyesore here. Second senior brother Feng. Zhou Ziqing glared at him, unconvinced. The old man waved his hand as if he was shooing away a fly. You're not thinking of helping him, are you? All right, then I'll go. Zhou Ziqing snorted and turned to look at Chu Li. Young hero do. The 2 of them don't represent Greenhill. Greenhill always keeps its word. They're here for a personal grudge. Chu Li scoffed and said coldly, Senior Zhou, please wait at the side. Bring their corpses back so that they don't get eaten by wild beasts. Young hero, do you better be careful. Zhou Ziqing shook his head. Big senior brother Feng and second senior brother Feng were people with high cultivation levels. Even if he was a disciple of the Tempest Temple, he would not be able to win against the two of them. Two palm energies collided without a sound. Very good, a sneak attack. Chu Li sneered. His body flashed with a golden light. A layer of golden light with a hint of purple dyed his white robe purple gold. Bam, bam. The two palm energies hit the white robe. The purple gold light wavered, but there was no change. He forcefully blocked the two palm attacks and pointed two fingers at the same time. TSS, the two finger energies merged into one. The two Feng brothers quickly dodged. They knew how powerful the spear finger was. No matter where the finger energy hit, the heart meridian would be severed. The spear finger was indeed the antique study of the Tempest Temple. Chu Li snorted. The spiritual energy from all directions surged into his body and turned into finger energies. The spear finger's power was shocking. It also consumed a lot of inner energy. When Fa Yuan used it, he had to store energy for a long time before he could use it. After the first finger, he needed some time to store energy before he could use the second finger. The sentient menace also consumed a lot of inner energy. The disciples of the Tempest Temple would never use two divine techniques at the same time. They would take turns to use them. Even a genius like Fa Yuan could only do so. Chu Li had the life and death scripture as his foundation. The spiritual energy from heaven and earth was endless. TSS, 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 the sound of the finger energies piercing through the air was endless. He waved both of his hands. The finger energies came one after another. It was as if he did not use inner energy. The two Feng brothers were forced to run around. They wanted to force Chu Li to stop using the spear finger. However, Chu Li activated the sentient menace and did not avoid their palm energies. He let them hit his body. He did not delay, and the finger energies weaved into a big net. The space they had to dodge was getting smaller and smaller. They could only retreat. Chu Li chased after them. The branches and leaves of the surrounding trees were blown into pieces when they were hit by the finger energies. The trees around them were riddled with holes. It was as if they had been attacked by insects. Not a single leaf remained. The two men's hair was messy. They were angry and shocked. They shouted, "Zhou Ziqing, are you going to watch us get killed?" Zhou Ziqing's expression was conflicted. He sighed helplessly. "Young Hero Du, why don't we all take a step back? Brother Feng and the others will not come looking for you. You will spare their lives. We won't hurt each other. How about that?" Chu Li sneered. Zhou Ziqing said, "Let the two Feng brothers swear that they will not get involved. The Green Hill will not get involved either." Chu Li said coldly, "They can represent the Green Hill. What a joke. If you want to save them, come at me together." Zhou Ziqing sighed. "Big brother Feng, second brother Feng, let's retreat." After saying that, he turned around and left, disappearing like a wisp of smoke. "Zhou, just you wait." Second brother Feng scolded and pointed two fingers at his body. Chu Li sneered. He knew that he was going to use his secret skill. He flashed behind him and waved both his hands. Second brother Feng's blood flow was stagnant. He was changing his secret skill. He could not avoid the finger energy that was so close to him. The spear finger hit him. His body stiffened, and he fell to the ground. Big brother Feng turned and ran. Chu Li was expressionless. He appeared behind him and shot two spear fingers at him. The distance was too close. Big brother Feng could only avoid one finger. Chu Li shot two fingers at him. He could not avoid it anymore. He froze and fell to the ground. He did not even have time to scold Chu Li. He was dead. The purplish golden light on Chu Li's body slowly disappeared. He shouted, "Senior Zhou, please show yourself." Zhou Ziqing appeared and looked at him helplessly. He did not expect Chu Li to be so powerful. The disciples of the Tempest Temple were scary, especially a grandmaster like him. He was not human. Chu Li said, "Senior Zhou, please go back and tell Mountain Master Lu that if anyone from the Green Hill comes for revenge, I will enter the Green Hill. When that happens, don't blame me for not following the rules. I don't care about the seniors or juniors. I will kill them all." Zhou Ziqing's expression changed. Chu Li said, "That's all I have to say. My patience is limited. We will meet again." He left in his white robe. Zhou Ziqing looked at his disappearing shadow. He looked down at the two corpses. He shook his head and sighed. Why did they have to do this? He did not know if the Mountain Master would swallow his anger or be angry after hearing his words. However, he made the right choice. There was no harm in keeping his promise. Otherwise, he would be the one lying on the ground. Chapter 253. Chu Li's anger dissipated a little after killing the two men. He skimmed over the treetops, his white robe fluttering, and arrived at a tea house. The tea house was located next to a dense forest. In the dense forest, there was a shed with 5 tables and 10 benches. It was simple and clean, making people feel refreshed and happy. An old man and a young lady were busy. The young lady was busy making pancakes, while the old man was shakily cutting the braised meat. His movements were slow and unhurried. There was a big teapot on the stove next to him, gurgling and steaming. Chu Li glanced around, walked into the tea house, and sat down at an empty table. There were a total of 5 tables, and 2 of them were already occupied. A pale-faced scholar was reading a book, eating pancakes while reading, and sipping tea from time to time. He was beaming with joy. At another table, there were 2 strong young men with thick eyebrows and big eyes. 2 long blades were placed on the table, and they were whispering and laughing from time to time. Hearing the footsteps, they looked up at Chu Li, and their eyes were as sharp as knives, staring at him carefully. Chu Li glanced at them indifferently. These 2 young men's actions were too overbearing and unscrupulous. Staring at people like this, especially people from the martial arts world, was no different from provoking him. They were bullying him for not practicing martial arts. Chu Li released his inner energy and walked step by step into the tea house, making them think that he did not know martial arts, and that the long blade at his waist was just to scare them. Their eyes stopped on the long blade at Chu Li's waist, lingering on it. As people who use blades, they could tell that the blade was extraordinary just by looking at the scabbard. If it was hanging on a martial arts master, they would be afraid and not dare to act recklessly. However, it was hanging on the waist of a weak young scholar. How could they not be tempted? They instantly felt greedy and wanted to take it for themselves. Their eyes flashed, and they looked at each other a few times. They slowly retracted their gaze and turned to the young lady in the tea house. Their gazes became more eager. Chu Li could not be bothered and sat down at the table. The young lady walked over lightly. She had a slender figure and wore a floral green coat. She had delicate features, and she asked him what he wanted to eat. Chu Li did not have an appetite, so he asked for tea. The young lady wiped the table again, brought over a big bowl, and lifted the teapot with both hands. He carried it over with some difficulty. There was too much water in the teapot, and some spilled out halfway. Chu Li looked at her with a smile, but he did not extend his hand to help. The old man raised his head to take a look, then lowered his head again to cut the meat. The gazes of the 2 young men roamed around her waist and buttocks, and they became more and more passionate. They couldn't wait to reach out and touch it. The big bowl was filled with tea. Chuli nodded to express his gratitude. Although the tea was coarse, it was enough to quench his thirst. "Miss, I'd like to ask around," Chuli said gently. The young lady looked at him. "What does young master want to know? Where is this place?" Chuli asked. He ran wildly all night. He crossed mountains and crossed rivers, but he didn't know where he was going. "This is Yushan." The young girl smiled and said, "It's only 50 li away from Yushan City." "Yushan City?" Chuli thought for a while and smiled. "Which one is it?" "Green Mountain Road," the girl replied. "Green Hill Road." Chuli was surprised and laughed. What a coincidence. It seemed like there was still a trace of rationality in his chaotic state of mind. The direction was right, and it was his destination. Green Hill Road was the road where Green Hill Town was located, where the Rim Public House guarded. The young girl smiled. "Young master, do you still want to know? Are there any martial arts factions around here?" Chuli asked. The young girl looked at him in surprise. "Martial arts factions? Young master, are you also a martial arts master?" Chuli waved his hand. "I'm very interested in these martial arts anecdotes. Of course, I'd like to pay a visit when I'm passing by. There are quite a few factions here. There's the Godly Knife faction, the Yushan faction, the Horse Bastion, and the Sworn Bastion." The young girl was very familiar. It was obvious that it was not her first time answering. She smiled. "The Godly Knife faction is the most powerful." As she said that, she glanced at the two young men who were looking over. "Godly Knife faction?" Chuli muttered and searched his mind. He nodded slowly. He had heard of this faction before, but it was only a second-rate faction. It was not considered eye-catching. He read a book in the library. It said that the founder of the Godly Knife faction was a top-notch swordsman. He ran amok in a region. Unfortunately, his disciples did not inherit his teachings, so the Godly Knife faction gradually declined into a second-rate faction. "Young master, do you want to know where the Godly Knife faction is?" the young girl asked. Chuli smiled. "Where is it?" "It's not far from here. It's only 10 miles away." The young girl pointed to the north. "Follow this road for another 10 miles. There's a big archway at the foot of a mountain. The Godly Knife faction is written on it. You can see it from afar." Chuli smiled and nodded. "Okay. Thank you, young lady." The young girl went back to making pancakes. The aroma of the pancakes wafted over. Chuli had an appetite. He ordered 2 plates of braised meat and 2 pancakes. The braised meat had a unique flavor. He glanced at the old man in surprise. There were really hidden dragons and crouching tigers. With such skills, why would he stay in a small shop in the mountains? It would not be difficult to make a living in the city. However, everyone had their own story, just like him. After eating, Chuli stood up and threw a piece of silver on the table. He then slowly walked out. He wanted to go to Yushan Town to have a look and relax. He did not use his light body technique. He just walked step by step, waiting for the 2 young men. Sure enough, after walking for a mile, Chuli turned his head to look back. The 2 young men followed behind him step by step, sizing him up with a meaningful look. Chuli frowned. He put his hands behind his back and asked, "What's the matter?" "Nothing." The 2 young men shook their heads and approached him with smiles on their faces. They stopped 10 steps away from him and looked at the saber on his waist. "Brother, we love sabers. When we saw the saber on your waist, we couldn't help but want to take a look at it." Chuli shook his head. "Isn't that against the rules?" It was a rude request to look at someone else's knife. Weapons involved life and death. How could one look at someone else? The 2 young men smiled mischievously. "We won't touch it. We'll just look at it from afar. Is that okay?" Chuli said, No need. Goodbye. He turned around and was about to leave when he heard a shout from behind. Stop right there. Chuli slowly turned around and looked at them calmly. What else do you want? We are the disciples of the Godly Knife faction. The two closed fist saluted. They looked arrogant, as if they were looking down on him. I'm sure you've heard of us. Chuli nodded. I've just heard of it. The Godly Knife faction. It's a big faction. That's why the two of you want to bully me. Why must you look at my knife? Looking at the knife is fake. Snatching the knife is real, right? Nonsense. The taller young man's face darkened. We dropped the knife just now. How did it become yours? Chuli smirked. You dropped it? That's right. This saber was found by us two brothers after much effort. We wanted to give it to our master as a birthday gift, but you actually picked it up. What a coincidence. The short youth laughed and said, Return the saber to us. Thank you very much. Chuli smirked. Is everyone in the Godly Knife faction this kind of people? Don't slander the Godly Knife faction. The shorter young man shouted. You can't afford it. Chapter 254. Chuli laughed. The Godly Knife faction is so powerful. Unfortunately, this treasure wasn't left behind by you brothers. I bought it from a poor man for only 100 taels of silver. 100 taels? Their eyes lit up. Then we'll buy it for 200 taels. What do you think? The taller man quickly said, Selling it for 100 taels. Isn't that a good deal? Chuli shook his head. I like knives too. If you earn 100 taels, you can buy another knife. The taller man advised. Chuli smiled faintly. Didn't you guys say you left it behind? Why do you want to buy a knife? He could see the thoughts of the tall youth. Although he seemed amiable, he was actually more cunning and suspicious. He felt that something was not quite right, so he wanted to get his hands on the treasured saber first. Once he got his hands on the treasured saber, wouldn't he be at his mercy? You're making fun of us, brothers. The short young man shouted. He took a step forward and was about to attack. Wait. The taller man frowned and looked at Chuli carefully. He smiled. I haven't asked for your name. Brother. Chuli said, Dufong. Brother Du, let's make a deal. Give us this knife for 500 taels of silver. The taller man smiled. This money should be enough to show our sincerity. We only want this knife. He felt that there was something wrong with the person in front of him. He was too calm and did not look like someone who did not practice martial arts. Those who did not practice martial arts, no matter how courageous or imposing they were, would always show signs of lacking confidence. However, the person in front of him seemed to be confident. Moreover, this person was a little strange. He came here but did not know where he was. He did not even ride a horse and walked towards Yushan town. The opposite direction to Hongshan town was more than 100 miles. He did not know martial arts and could not ride a horse. Did he walk 100 miles? Looking at him, although he looked haggard, he did not look like he walked 100 miles. In short, this person was unpredictable. It was better not to provoke him. Brother, the shorter man shouted. The taller man waved his hand. He looked at Chuli with a smile. How about 1,000 taels? Chuli shook his head. I don't know how to sell the knife. Goodbye. He turned around and left. He sighed to himself. The world did not lack smart people. This guy was quite perceptive. Unfortunately, he couldn't let them go. With their dirty thoughts, the young girl selling tea would soon become the victim. As a disciple of the Godly Knife sect, they were truly unscrupulous. Stop! The short young man yelled and ignored his senior brother's attempt to stop him. He flew over Chuli's head and landed in front of him. He stared at him coldly, his eyes gleaming. His aura was fierce and piercingly cold. Chu Li frowned. Why? Are you going to use force? Humph, soft tactics really don't work. We still have to rob. The short young man grinned and scoffed. Senior brother, you're getting more and more timid. The tall young man helplessly shook his head and stomped his feet. It was better to be careful when dealing with this kind of unknown fellow. If he really provoked a powerful person, it would be too late for regrets. This silly junior brother. Chu Li looked at him calmly. What do you want? Hand over the treasured blade, and I'll spare your life, the short youth snorted. Will you really spare my life? Chu Li shook his head. I don't believe it. You're still able to roam free and unfettered until now. Isn't it because you killed people to silence them? Brat, you seem to know quite a lot. The short young man looked at his senior brother and scoffed. You're digging your own grave. I'm in a good mood today, so I wanted to spare your life. Too bad. You're digging your own grave. Chu Li sighed. Yes, digging your own grave. Are you going to hand it over? The short young man yelled. If not, don't blame me for killing you. Chu Li shook his head. He leaped onto a tree next to him and ran away by stepping on the treetops. Go after him, senior brother. The short young man saw his senior brother in a daze. He quickly yelled and took big strides to chase after him. The tall young man frowned as he stared at Chu Li's figure. He did not stop and chased after him. No matter what, he could not let this white-robed man escape. He might attract the protectors of the public house. Chu Li used his light body technique and sped towards the direction of the Godly Knife faction. The two of them chased after him and smiled. They were not anxious because they could not catch up to him. They secretly laughed that this fellow was really muddle-headed. He probably could not recognize the road. As long as he got close to the Godly Knife faction, with a signal, many of his fellow disciples would rush over to surround and kill him. It would be foolproof, no matter how good his light body technique was. They did not dare to chase too closely, in case he changed his direction. They were waiting to see Chu Li make a fool of himself. When the signal was sent out, he would be surrounded. It would be an interesting scene. Chu Li's white robe fluttered in the wind. He was not fast. He turned his head to look at the two young men from time to time. He seemed to be trying his best to maintain his composure. This made the two young men more confident and relaxed. They had smiles on their faces. When he was about 2 miles away from the Godly Knife faction, Chu Li suddenly stopped and landed on the ground. He slowly pulled out his knife. Don't force me to fight. The two stopped 10 meters away from him. The tall young man suddenly waved his hand, and a signal flew into the sky. The sky exploded in the shape of a long black knife. It was condensed and did not dissipate. It was like a long knife formed by a dark cloud. The short young man stared at him in dissatisfaction. Why did he have to call for help now? They could not eat alone anymore. The tall young man's face was solemn. He stared at Chu Li cautiously. His body was tense. Chu Li looked around. He felt that if he killed someone here, the distance was far enough. He should not be a burden to the Godly Knife faction. Who exactly are you? The tall young man asked in a deep voice. Chu Li shook his head. I am Du Feng. What faction are you from? I am not from any faction. So secretive. You are just a rat. The short young man shouted. Let me fight you. He pulled out his knife and rushed towards Chu Li. The knife slashed at Chu Li's face like a waterfall. Chu Li tilted his body to avoid it. His eyes fell on the tall young man. The tall young man cursed. Chu Li was not simple. He could not use a hidden weapon to attack. Chu Li avoided the short young man's long knife. He deliberately stared at the tall young man. He was multitasking. The tall young man did not dare to casually pull out his knife. He wanted to buy time. Chu Li also wanted to buy time. How could killing one or two people be satisfying? If he wanted to kill, he should kill more. The Godly Knife faction would be afraid. They would not dare to allow their disciples to cause trouble. The frustration in his heart made him want to kill more and more. Damn it! You only know how to dodge. The short young man shouted. The long knife suddenly sped up and hit Chu Li in an instant. The short young man smiled. He felt that the knife was empty. He did not use any strength. He missed. Chu Li smiled. The knife technique of the Godly Knife faction was interesting. It was worth watching. The short young man's skill was shallow. He could not unleash the power of this knife technique. Brother Yi, Brother Qin. 4 young men in blue shirts rushed over from afar. They held long knives in their hands. They were aggressive. Chu Li saw that the time was right. He moved the long knife in his hand. A flash of cold electricity passed through the short young man's neck. A human head flew high into the air, blood spurting out like a fountain 3 feet high. Bang! The head fell to the ground. The corpse was still standing. Blood was still gushing out. Brother Qin. The 5 of them cried out. Chu Li glanced at the 5 of them. He gently shook the long knife. The blood dripped from the knife. The knife became shiny again. Chapter 255. Everyone looked at his calm gaze and was shocked. Chu Li looked at them quietly, and finally his gaze landed on the taller youth. You want to take the blade? Let's see what you've got. If you're not good enough, this will be your fate. The shorter youth's head rolled into the grass, revealing only the back of his head. The body was still standing, as if it was unwilling to fall. The taller youth's face darkened. He was shocked and angry, but he felt lucky that he did not rush out. He shouted, Who are you? Dufeng. Chu Li said, Do you still want the blade? Dufeng, you killed a disciple of the Godly Knife faction. Do you know that you're in big trouble? The taller youth shouted. Chu Li looked at the other 4. What about you guys? You want to take my blade too? What blade? One of the youths asked. The taller youth scoffed. Brother Meng, Brother Qin, and I had our eyes on his blade. We thought he didn't know martial arts, but he was hiding his strength. We misjudged him. Damn it! The 4 youths' expressions changed slightly. They nodded slowly and looked at him with sympathy and gloating. They could understand this feeling. They thought he was a fat sheep, but he turned out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. Not only did they fail to kill the sheep, they got bitten instead. There was nothing more unlucky and depressing than this. Chu Li looked at the 4 of them and activated the omniscient mirror. He sighed. The Godly Knife faction, what a Godly Knife faction. They really did run amok and scrupulous, not afraid of bringing disaster upon themselves. He turned and left. Stop! The 5 surrounded him and glared at him. You want to leave? Chu Li scoffed. You still want to fight? He looked at the still-standing body and shook his head. You have a bad memory. Brother Qin is reckless and his martial arts is not good. We'd like to learn from him. One of the youths scoffed. You killed a disciple of the Godly Knife faction. Just wait for your whole family to be killed. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and squinted his eyes. Everyone, let's go! The taller youth shouted. Chu Li pulled out his blade again and looked at the 5 quietly. Leave now and I'll spare your lives. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. The 5 looked at each other. The tall young man snorted. Do put down your knife now and we can spare your life. Chu Li smiled. Spare my life? We'll spare your life. The tall young man said, As long as you submit to our godly saber gate, we can let bygones be bygones. Then what about the dead one? It was an accident. Interesting. Chu Li turned to look at the other 4. What about you guys? Senior Marshal Brother, ye sees that you're a talent. Otherwise, if you kill Junior Marshal Brother Chin, it will be hard for you to live. A young man snorted, Why haven't you put down your blade and surrendered? They all knew what Senior Brother Yi was trying to do. Once the knife was put down, it was up to them to decide whether to kill or torture them. Moreover, Senior Brother Yi was also stalling for time. There was a signal. Soon, more disciples of the Godly Knife sect would arrive. The 4 of them were only the first batch, and there would be more. The longer they dragged on, the stronger they would become. Chu Li felt that killing 5 of them was enough. He would leave 1 to report back and see what the Godly Knife faction would do next. He now hoped that the Godly Knife faction would be as tough as he hoped. He said lightly, You should be the ones to put down your blade and surrender. I will count to 5. If you don't put down your blade, you die. 5. 4. Ha ha, this is interesting. 3. Surname Du, are you crazy? I will also count to 5. If you don't surrender, we will kill you. The tall young man laughed. 2. Chu Li spat out a word. Also 2. The tall young man shouted. 1. 1. Chu Li calmly looked at the 5 of them. If that's the case, I will send you on your way. As he finished, the light from his blade flashed. Swoosh! A head flew up. A pillar of blood shot up to the sky. Chu Li's footsteps turned, and the light from his blade flashed again. Swoosh! Another head flew up. Run! The tall young man screamed. Chu Li's footwork and blade technique were so fast that they had no chance to fight back. With such an enemy, not running would be suicide. The 3 of them turned and ran, each running in a different direction. Chu Li shook his head and disappeared on the spot. He appeared behind a young man, and the light from his blade flashed. The head flew up, and the pillar of blood shot up to the sky. He flashed again and appeared behind the tall young man. He sighed. You're asking for it. Wait. The tall young man shouted. He quickly raised his hands and waved them. Chu Li pressed down on his blade and looked at him calmly. Any last words? I will exchange a secret for my life. The tall young man shouted. I guarantee that this secret is worth more than my life. Chu Li said, Then tell me. You have to promise not to kill me first. Tell me what it is first. The secret of the 7 forms of Godly Blade. The tall young man said loudly, Our ancestor used to dominate the world with the 7 forms of divine knife, but later on, none of the disciples in the sect were able to master the 7 forms of divine knife because it was lost. I know where the 7 forms of divine knife is. Where is it? You have to promise not to kill me. It's in the faction of Godly Blade, right? What? The tall young man's expression changed, and he screamed. It took him a lot of effort to control himself from asking, How did you know? Chu Li sighed. There is a secret passage in the main hall of the Godly Blade faction that leads to a cave. The 7 forms of Godly Blade are carved on the walls of the cave, right? How did you know? The tall young man could no longer control his shock. Chu Li shook his head. The 7 forms of Godly Blade. Humph, didn't you cultivate the 7 forms of Godly Blade? Show me. Okay. The tall young man gritted his teeth, and his face darkened. Since there was no hope of escape, he could only use his ultimate move. His expression became solemn. He slowly raised the long blade to the top of his head and slowly wrapped it around his waist. His clothes fluttered even though there was no wind, and the blade emitted a murderous aura. The blade suddenly lit up. He became one with the blade and turned into an arc of light that shot towards Chu Li. Chu Li took a step to the side and barely avoided it. He waved the long blade in his hand, and the head of the tall young man rolled in the air. The body rushed into the forest beside. The 7 forms of godly blade. Chu muttered. He gently shook the treasured blade. There was not a single drop of blood. The 7 forms of godly blade was really something. It was somewhat similar to the eternity blade. It gathered all the energy in one strike. However, the eternity blade was a flying blade after all. If it was used on a long blade, its power would be reduced. It was not as good as the 7 forms of godly blade. This tall young man had only cultivated 1 form, and it was already so powerful. What would the other 6 forms be like? This guy was quite perceptive. He knew that he should not bite off more than he could chew. He only looked at the picture of the first form and did not look at the other 6 forms. It was a pity. He replayed the mural that the tall young man saw in his mind. He slowly raised the blade and slowly wrapped it around his waist. Suddenly, his inner energy surged and flowed crazily. It was twice as fast as usual. All the inner energy rushed to his hand and the blade. Swoosh! He disappeared with the long blade and turned into an arc of light that shot towards a tree. A pine tree that was as thick as a waist was cut in half. The top half slowly fell and landed heavily on the ground. Bang! He looked down at the tree ring. It was as smooth as a mirror. The power of this blade was really shocking. Chapter 256. He sheathed his blade and continued on his way to Yushan City. Originally, he was supposed to pass by the Godly Knife faction, but Chu took a turn and bypassed the Godly Knife faction. He guessed that the Godly Knife faction had already set up an ambush in front of him. He did not want to bump into them. He was a grandmaster, but he was not invincible. Even the second-rate Godly Knife faction had to be careful. He restrained his urge to kill. He did not want his emotions to affect him. So he did not rush to the Godly Knife faction. Killing those 5 was a warning to them not to be so unbridled. However, if the Godly Knife faction really wanted to die, then they could not blame him. He could release his murderous intent to his heart's content. Those who were willing to take the bait, if they wanted to die, then he would let them die, acting in place of the heavens, acting with a justifiable reason. One's mind was at peace, and it was beneficial to one's cultivation. He had faintly touched upon the doorway of the heavenly deity realm. Chu used his light body technique and floated away. Along the way, he was multitasking, studying the first form of the godly blade and gradually becoming familiar with it. Before he knew it, the omniscient mirror had already seen a small town. But at the same time, he saw a group of people lying in ambush a mile away from the city gate. They were waiting with their nets wide open, and among them was the young man whom he had let go. He smiled. Sure enough, the Godly Knife faction was used to running amok. They couldn't stand this. He glided forward and used the omniscient mirror to observe the situation. There were 22 people lying in ambush in the forest. 4 of them were middle-aged, and the rest were youths. Although the passers-by did not see the ambush inside, they could feel the sudden coldness in the air. They felt a chill in their hearts and hurriedly sped up to leave. The 22 people lying in ambush did not move until Chu appeared. Go! A middle-aged man waved his hand. 22 people rushed out of the forest and pounced on Chu like a swarm of ants. Their blades flashed as they tried to dismember Chu. Chu growled, "Stop right there!" The middle-aged man ignored him and shouted, "Kill him!" He felt that there was no need to ask for the reason. He just needed to kill. Since he had killed 5 disciples of the Godly Knife faction, no amount of excuses would be of any use. There was only one way out for him: death. Everyone had a fierce look on their faces as they clenched their teeth and brandished their sabers. He saw the miserable state of his 5 fellow disciples. their heads separated from their bodies. They felt a sense of sympathy for the loss of their own kind and shared a common hatred for the enemy. No matter what, they had to chop him into minced meat. Chuli shook his head and sighed. If they wanted to die, then let them die. The flash of the divine blade appeared. He became one with the saber, like a flash of lightning. Chi! 3 heads flew into the air and blood gushed out like a fountain. After killing these 3 people, he had already rushed out of the crowd. He turned around and charged into the crowd, using the first style of godly blade again. One with the saber. Chi! 2 heads flew up, and a pillar of blood soared into the sky. Kill! The crowd was stimulated by the scene of blood gushing out. Not only were they not afraid, but they became even more valiant. All of them charged at Chu Li with bloodshot eyes. Chu Li kept performing the first form of blade god. Every time, he would chop off 1 or 2 heads. It was difficult for him to chop off 3 heads. In the blink of an eye, 18 of the 22 men had fallen, leaving only 4 middle-aged men. Their faces darkened as they glared at Chu Li. They stood shoulder to shoulder, completely unbothered by the 18 dead disciples. They only had eyes for Chu Li and only had one thought in their mind, which was to kill him. Chu Li gently shook the treasure blade, which was still shiny as new. He calmly said, "Do you still want to die? Who the hell are you?" A middle-aged man shouted. Chu Li called out, "Du Feng." "What kind of saber technique is that?" The middle-aged man continued to ask. Chu Li said, "The nameless saber technique." "The nameless saber technique. Ha! What a nameless saber technique." The middle-aged man sneered. "Since you don't want to say it, then shut your mouth forever." The faces of the 4 men turned red. Their bodies suddenly swelled up. In the time it took to say these 2 sentences, the secret technique had already been performed. Kill! The 4 men charged at Chu Li. Their blades flashed like lightning and instantly appeared in front of him. Chu Li lowered his body and leaped out. The 4 men's skills had doubled, and their saber technique was exactly the first form of blade god that he had performed. Kill! 4 blades flashed again, and Chu Li retreated again. The 4 men pursued him relentlessly, but they were still 1 step behind him. Their eyes were bloodshot and filled with hatred. Their eyeballs bulged out as if they were going to jump out at any time. Chu Li shook his head. It seemed like they only knew this one form. It seemed like the Godly Knife faction did not pass down the 7 forms of Blade God, but only one form. Kill! Chu Li said calmly, and performed the first form of Blade God again. A flash of lightning flashed past 2 middle-aged men, and their heads flew. Chu Li turned around and performed the first form of Blade God again, and the remaining 2 middle-aged men's heads also flew. Sigh! Chu Li held onto his blade, and spiritual energy surged from all directions to fill the emptiness in his body. He shook his long blade and slowly returned it to its sheath. He glanced at the street full of human heads and corpses, shook his head, and fluttered away into Yushan town. Entering the bustling city again, Chu Li felt as if it was a lifetime ago. It felt like he had been away from Chongming town for a long time. He walked slowly along the street, looking at the busy street, the hawkers shouting at the top of their lungs, the adults haggling, the children running and playing, the martial artists walking with their heads held high, and the young women smiling sweetly. He suddenly felt lonely. He touched the sleeves of his white robe, and a cool and delicate feeling entered his heart. It was as if Shao Qi's cold face appeared in front of him, looking at him. He smiled and regained his composure. He came to a tea house by the street and asked for a bowl of tea. As he drank, he listened to the people around him chatting, and it was bustling with noise. According to his original character, he would go straight to the best restaurant in the town, drink wine, eat delicious food, and listen to the news around him to understand the situation in Yushan town. Now, it was different. With a different identity, he had to do things differently. Compared to the best restaurant, the tea house by the street was closer to life, and they knew about the trivial matters of the common people and the news of the lower class. Before he finished his cup of tea, 10 middle-aged men rushed over and surrounded Chu Li. Chu Li held the bowl and looked at them quietly. Du Feng. The middle-aged man who spoke had a sallow face and looked sick, but he was an innate master, and his cultivation level was high. His eyes were sharp, and his gaze was as sharp as a knife. Chu Li looked at him. I am Du Feng. He slowly put down the bowl. You want to fight in the town? You killed 27 disciples of the Godly Knife faction. You are evil. The middle-aged man said coldly, We will not forgive you. Chu Li said, How many disciples does the Godly Knife faction have? The Godly Knife faction has countless disciples. You won't be able to kill them all even if you want to. The middle-aged man scoffed. You want to fight the Godly Knife faction alone. You are courting death. Chu Li picked up the tea again and took a sip. Such arrogance. If you want to fight, just do it. Why bother with the nonsense? This middle-aged man was quite scheming, and if he did not have the right name, he would not be offended even if he fought in the town. The middle-aged man's goal was achieved, and he shouted, Kill him! The people in the tea house had already run far away, and soon many people gathered around to watch. The people whispered and looked at Chu Li quietly sitting at the table, his hand on the long knife on the table. His white robe was spotless, and he looked like an elegant scholar. He did not look like a martial arts master at all, and he killed 27 disciples of the Godly Knife faction. Chapter 257. Kill. 10 middle-aged men raised their swords and slashed at Chu Li. 10 streaks of silver light rushed towards him. Chu Li sat at the table and pulled out his sword and slashed behind him. Swoosh! A head flew up and blood spurted into the sky. Ah! The people screamed in fear, and their faces turned pale. They had never seen such a cruel scene. A head flew into the air and blood gushed out like a fountain. It was too cruel and frightening. Chu Li swung his sword again, and another head flew up. He had been studying the first form of Godly Blade, and was able to use it freely, increasing the speed of his sword. In front of his swift sword, the 10 middle-aged men moved as slow as old people. Chu Li swung his sword twice, but before their swords could reach Chu Li, ding, 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 Chu Li swung his sword to block 8 long swords. Then the treasured sword in his hand turned into lightning again. Swoosh, swoosh. 2 heads flew up again. In an instant, it became 6 people. He swung his sword again to block their swords, and then swung his sword again. 3 heads flew up. In the blink of an eye, there were only 3 people left. The middle-aged man who spoke earlier had a few drops of blood on his sallow face. He looked even more ferocious, as if he wanted to eat Chu Li. Chu Li swung his sword like lightning, but his expression was calm. He sat steadily at the table. Only the sword moved, and the chair did not move. Blood splattered everywhere, and heads flew and rolled on the ground. The scene was so bloody and cruel that many people around vomited. His white robe was clean, and there was not a single drop of blood on his body. The people around him had an illusion that he was not the one who swung his sword. He was just a scholar holding a book and watching coldly from the side. He was elegant and calm, noble and arrogant. He was not in the same world as the ordinary people. The sallow middle-aged man pointed his sword at him and did not have the courage to swing it. He knew that if the 3 of them swung their swords again, they would be decapitated. Chu Li picked up the big bowl and took a sip of tea. Tell your faction leader, I don't want to kill my way to the Godly Blade Mountain. I hope he knows his place. Okay, I will. The sallow middle-aged man snorted and turned to leave. The other two quickly followed. Before they left, they glared at Chu Li fiercely. Chu Li put down the teacup and threw an ingot of silver on the counter. He smiled at the shopkeeper behind the counter and said, "I'm sorry. This silver can be considered as compensation. The tea was really ordinary." The shopkeeper was a middle-aged man who knew some martial arts. He hurriedly waved his hand. He didn't dare to take the money from this killing god. If he made him unhappy, his head would be removed. He had chopped off 7 heads without batting an eyelid, and he was still smiling. His expression did not change at all. It was best to avoid such a killing god. Chu Li smiled, turned around, and started to pace. He avoided the blood, corpses, and heads on the ground as he walked towards the city gate. He knew that he couldn't stay here any longer. After killing 7 people in the city, the patrol officer would definitely come to arrest him. The crowd automatically made way for him and watched as he slowly walked away. His white robe fluttered in the wind, and his demeanor was elegant and calm. He truly looked like a character from a painting. He thought about it and felt a little worried. He decided to go back and have a look. After a few flashes, he arrived at the tea house where he had been drinking tea. The original tea house was in ruins. The pillars supporting the shed were chopped off, and the tables and chairs were chopped into pieces. The pancake pan was kicked over, and the teapot was deflated into a piece of iron. It looked like an old man who had been cutting braised meat had fallen to the ground. His body was stiff, and he had been dead for a long time. The girl was nowhere to be seen. Chu Li's face darkened, and he checked the old man's injury. 1 fatal stab. The Godly Knife faction. Chu Li's figure suddenly disappeared and appeared in the woods. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the neck of a young man. He said coldly, "The Godly Knife faction did it." The young man's feet left the ground, and he struggled to kick his legs. He used both his hands to pull Chu Li's left hand. Chu Li scoffed. "What about the girl?" "Very good." Chu Li sneered and exerted force with his left hand. Kacha! A crisp sound was heard. The young man's legs kicked the ground, and he remained motionless. Chu Li's face darkened. The Godly Knife faction was really courting death. His figure disappeared from the spot. After a few flashes, he appeared in the Godly Knife faction. The Godly Knife faction was located in the Godly Knife Mountain. The faction was not named after the mountain, but the mountain was named after the faction. The Godly Knife Mountain was a 1,000-meter high peak. At the foot of the mountain, there was a grand archway with the words Godly Knife faction written on it. The archway was golden and powerful. The Godly Knife faction was located halfway up the Godly Knife Mountain. There were a total of 3 main halls, and the rest were houses. Chu Li appeared in the Godly Knife faction and used the omniscient mirror to observe. There were a total of 300 disciples in the faction. There were 20 innate masters and 1 grandmaster. The grandmaster was as old as a pine tree. He was sitting on a cattail hassock in the West Main Hall. There was a long knife on his knees, and he was motionless. Chu Li quickly found the girl in the tea house. She was being pressed on the bed by a young man, and her clothes were being stripped off. She was only left with a doo-doo and undergarment, and her snow-white arms and shoulders were exposed. She gritted her teeth, and her eyes were red. She kept struggling, but under the strong body of the young man, she was weak and powerless. Her resistance was futile. Her stubborn eyes gradually showed despair, and her will to die became firmer. Chu Li suddenly appeared in the house and slapped the young man's back. The young man was enjoying it with a face full of excitement. The more he resisted, the better it was. Obediently obeying was tasteless, which was exciting and interesting. He felt pain in his back, and his vision suddenly went black. It was eternal darkness. Chu Li picked him up and threw him to the corner of the wall, like a rag. He looked at the girl. The girl quickly shrunk her body to cover her body and shrank to the corner of the bed. Chu Li picked up the long robe beside him to cover her body. He did not reach out to touch her. He looked into her eyes and said gently, "It's okay. I'll get you out of here." The girl's frightened eyes pierced his heart. He had already avoided it so far, but he still could not avoid it. The Godly Knife faction was so overbearing. Chu Li saw that she had calmed down and said gently, "Where is your house? I'll send you back. I only have my grandfather to rely on. There's no one else," the girl said softly. Her voice was hoarse. "If my grandfather is dead, I have no home." Chu Li sighed. "It's my fault." The girl shook her head and did not speak. "All right then, I'll arrange it," Chu Li said gently. "Do you want to practice martial arts?" "Yes." The girl's eyes suddenly brightened. She gritted her teeth and nodded. "I want to practice martial arts." Chu Li nodded. "I'll send you to a famous faction." He decided to send the girl to the Snow Lunar Pavilion. For his sake, the Snow Lunar Pavilion would not reject her entry into the faction. "Thank you, master." The girl lowered her head and said. Chu Li shook his head. "I'll send you to a safe place first. Then I'll come back and settle the score with them." He turned his head and gestured for her to wear her clothes. The sound of clothes rustling could be heard. After a while, the girl said softly, "It's done." Chu Li turned around and saw that she was wearing a loose robe. Her figure looked even more petite. He smiled and said, "After we destroy the Godly Knife faction, I'll buy you some clothes. Let's go." He reached out his big hand. The girl hesitated for a moment and slowly put her small hand into his. Chapter 258. P.S. After the first alliance leader, Gentle Bandit, the second alliance leader, Han Jiangyi, Chu Li teleported to the Godly Knife faction. He stood in the Godly Knife faction using the omniscient mirror. He could clearly see Li Hanyan's condition. She had already caused her grandfather's death. He did not want her to get hurt again. Li Hanyan was sitting in a daze in the cave with her arms crossed. She did not say a word, and her eyes were empty. A sorrowful aura permeated the cave. Chu Li sighed. His hatred for the Godly Knife faction grew, his killing intent surging like a tidal wave. He stood in front of the Godly Knife faction and let out a long howl. "Du Feng is here. Everyone from the Godly Knife faction, come forth and accept your death." The howl was like a giant bell ringing in everyone's ears. The Godly Knife faction immediately moved. 300 disciples rushed into the basilica. Inside the basilica, the withered elder was surrounded by them. He closed his eyes and meditated. The people in the basilica did not move, only their heavy breathing. In the spacious and quiet basilica, their breathing was exceptionally loud. They all knew how powerful Du Feng was, but they did not expect him to be so bold as to come to their doorstep. This was a situation the Godly Knife faction had never encountered before. If not for Du Feng's strength, they would not have come looking for the faction leader. They could have just rushed out and killed him. The withered elder slowly opened his eyes. The basilica suddenly lit up. Everyone in the basilica felt their eyes hurt. They quickly looked away. The faction leader's gaze was so sharp, it felt like a knife was cutting their eyes. They did not dare to look directly at him. "Faction leader," an elder said, "this person is so reckless. He must be killed." "Elder Yang, can you kill him?" Faction leader Li Shindao asked calmly. The elder shook his head, helplessly. "Faction leader, I'm not sure." "You know your limits," Li Shindao said. "For now, it's best to avoid him." Faction leader, "We have 300 disciples." Elder Yang quickly said, Can't 300 disciples defeat him? The key is kill him, Li Shindao said. How many of the 300 disciples will be left? Everyone's expression changed. Du Feng's reputation as the god of slaughter had spread throughout the Godly Knife faction. Everyone in Yushan City knew about him. His speed and ruthlessness were beyond imagination. The head flew up, and everyone felt a chill on their necks. All right, everyone retreat and disperse, Li Shindao said slowly. I will deal with him myself. Go and run for your lives. Wait for him to leave, and then return to the mountain gate. The Godly Knife faction will not perish. Sect Master, everyone hurriedly shouted. Don't waste any time. Leave now. Li Shindao snorted. His eyes lit up. His blade-like gaze swept over everyone, and their hearts trembled. Their sect leader had always been a man of his word, and his martial arts were extremely tyrannical, rarely seen in the world. Therefore, they were unscrupulous and committed outrages, but they were respectful and fearful of their sect leader. They obeyed him without exception. You want to leave? Chu Li's voice rang out. He was dressed in a white robe and stood quietly at the entrance of the main hall. He coldly swept his gaze across the crowd. Bullying the weak, killing and looting, the Godly Knife faction is guilty of the most heinous crimes. They must be punished. Everyone flew into a rage. How arrogant! Motherf asterisk cur. Destroy your Motherf asterisk cur. F asterisk CK. Your grandma. Just you wait. Surnamed Dewey will definitely find your home and exterminate your entire family. Kill him. Kill him. The crowd did not stop cursing, all of them talking at once. The main hall was in chaos, everyone shouting at the top of their lungs, their voices deafening. All of you, shut up, Li Shindao growled. The deafening insults stopped abruptly. Everyone fixed their eyes on Li Shindao. Li Shindao slowly stood up. His wizened body slowly walked towards Chu Li. Everyone hurriedly made way for him, clearing out a large space. With every step Li Shindao took, the wrinkles on his face disappeared. He stood in front of Chu Li. From a frail old man, he had turned into a handsome middle-aged man, full of vigor, his gaze sharp as a blade, like an unsheathed treasure blade. Chu Li's eyebrows twitched. He did not expect Li Shindao to have such a miraculous skill, similar to his life and death scripture. Li Shindao drew his blade. He tossed the scabbard aside, his left index finger gently stroking the back of the blade, as if caressing a lover. He sighed. It's been a long time since I drew my blade. Chu Li said, Li Shindao? Li Shindao raised his head to look at him, his gaze like a blade, scanning the flaws on his body. Dufeng? Chu Li smiled. A Grand Master is so muddle-headed, allowing your disciples to do as they please. Did you not know this day would come? So what? Li Shindao looked at him indifferently. For those who practice the blade, all things are under the blade. All living beings are like ants. Without such courage, how can they cultivate the supreme blade technique? Chu Li said, what a joke. Do you think you can cultivate their murderous intent like this, and cultivate a profound blade technique? The Godly Knife faction is so prosperous because of this, Li Shindao said. Chu Li shook his head. Those who use the blade must understand the will of heaven. The will of heaven is my heart. Only then can I understand the path of the blade. You are so reckless, going against the will of heaven. How can you cultivate the supreme blade technique? Come, let me see your Boolsh * T-blade technique. You have some knowledge. Watch out. Li Shindao did not allow him to continue. With a swing of the blade, the entire room was filled with dazzling light, like the sun had fallen into the main hall. No one could open their eyes. They could not see anything. The dazzling light dissipated, and everyone could open their eyes again. Chu Li slowly sheathed his blade. Li Shindao did not move. his eyes widened in disbelief. His gaze was filled with malice and hatred. Chu Li shook his head. Your blade technique is not bad. With a flash of the blade, Li Shindao's head flew, blood spurting out like a pillar. Chu Li took a step back to avoid the blood staining his white robe. No one saw that when he swung his blade, he used the spear finger strike at the same time. Li Shindao knew that Chu Li's blade technique was powerful, so he focused on his blade and did not guard against the spear finger strike. He was alarmed, and by the time he tried to dodge, his blade technique was already used up. He desperately moved a foot away, barely dodging. Another 2 strikes came, and he tried to dodge, but he could not. The spear finger strike landed on his shoulder, and he immediately froze. Another 2 spear finger strikes landed. With 3 strikes, even if he was a grandmaster, he still froze. Faction leader! Everyone screamed. Li Shindao's head rolled 2 meters away, and everyone avoided it in panic, like avoiding a snake or a scorpion. Chu Li stood at the door and lightly shook his long blade. Who else? Avenge the faction leader. Everyone shouted. Elder Yang shouted, he's only one person, let's kill him. Whoever kills him will be the faction leader of the Godly Knife faction. Kill. Everyone's spirits were lifted and their eyes turned red. The faction leader of the Godly Knife faction had a prestigious position, and hundreds would respond to his call. As a disciple of the Godly Knife faction, which one of them did not want to be the faction leader, Chu Li scoffed and went up to meet them. Faced with the crowd's attacks, he used the first form of the Godly Knife to his heart's content. He moved around, and wherever he passed, the blade flashed, heads flew, and blood spurted into the sky. The thick smell of blood filled their minds, but not only were they not afraid, they became even crazier. They had already lost their minds, and only had one thought: kill. Chu Li sighed as he swung his blade. This Li Shindao was not completely useless. At least he cultivated the bravery of his disciples. Unfortunately, this bravery was not worth mentioning in front of the absolute Godly Knife. As time passed, Chu Li did not stop swinging his blade. His inner energy was endless, and the treasured blade was as sharp as ever, even after cutting off so many heads. 200 people were killed, and the basilica became emptier. Stop! Chu Li yelled. His voice contained a strange power, and everyone could not help but feel refreshed. They looked around, and when they saw the corpses and heads on the ground, their expressions changed. Chu Li scoffed. Who else has done so much evil? His gaze swept across the crowd. Some of them avoided his gaze and did not dare to look at him. Chu Li remained calm as he killed and activated the omniscient mirror to observe their hearts, to see how strong their killing intent was. Among the 300 people, the 200 with the strongest killing intent had already been killed. The remaining ones did not have any killing intent and had not killed anyone. I'll spare your lives. Go. From today onwards, the Godly Knife faction will no longer exist. Chu Li scoffed. The crowd looked at each other blankly, and then looked at the puddles of blood on the ground. They did not have the courage to swing their blades. Chu Li glided away from the basilica and came to a basilica at the side. There were rows of memorial tablets on the northern table. He closed fist saluted, and then moved one of the legs of the table. A hole appeared on the ground, and he went in. Soon he came to a cave. The cave was empty, and there were almost no signs of people. No one came here. Chapter 259. The 7 forms of divine knife were clearly drawn on the wall. The words were simple and bold. With a single glance, he had already imprinted it into his mind. With a wave of the long knife, the stone powder rustled. In a short while, the ground was as smooth as a mirror. The 7 forms of divine knife had completely disappeared from the world. He floated out of the cave and exited from the other side. It was a small cave entrance halfway up the precipice. It was also covered by green vines and was almost impossible to discover. He quickly appeared in front of Li Hanyan. Li Hanyan had already fallen asleep with her arms wrapped around her shoulders. After being tormented by grief, fear, pain, surprise, and sadness for so long, she finally couldn't stand the exhaustion and fell asleep unknowingly. Her face was deathly pale, and her forehead was dripping with sweat. Her delicate eyebrows were tightly knitted as she muttered, "Grandpa, Grandpa." Chuli sighed and shook his head. This was his own sin. It was a pity that he was too late and did not manage to save the old man. The spirit blessing pill did not work, and the art of eclipse purloin could not save him either. Ah! Li Hanyan suddenly screamed and sat up abruptly. Li handed her a bundle. "Did you have a nightmare?" "Big brother do." Li Hanyan relaxed when she saw him. Li said, "The godly knife faction has been annihilated. We've taken our revenge." Li Hanyan nodded lightly. "There are clothes in the backpack. Change into them, and I'll send you off to learn martial arts." Li exited the cave. Li Hanyan bit her lip as she opened the bundle. Inside were 6 or 7 pieces of clothing, both underwear and outerwear. She changed into a green robe and slowly walked out of the cave. Li was sitting at the entrance of the cave, looking in the direction of the godly knife faction. "Big brother do, I want to go take a look," Li Hanyan said. Li nodded and reached out to hold her wrist. Then they glided to the outside of the basilica of the godly knife faction. After a while, there was no one left in the godly knife gate, and the main hall was closed. "It's inside." Li gestured. Li Hanyan looked at him and pushed the door open. The thick smell of blood instantly poured into her body, and her eyes widened. He stared blankly at the ground littered with headless corpses and heads rolling everywhere, as well as the ground covered in black blood. "Wah!" She suddenly bent over and vomited. Li smiled. This was enough to wash away her sadness. Li Hanyan couldn't stop vomiting until there was nothing left to vomit. Even the stomach acid had dried up. He still couldn't hold back the urge to vomit. The scene just now had an unimaginable impact on her. Li stepped forward and gently patted her back. Spiritual energy spread throughout her body. It was as if she was immersed in ice-cold spring water, and all the discomfort disappeared in an instant. "Let's go," Li said. Li Hanyan nodded vigorously. He held her wrist and walked out of the godly knife clan. In order to take care of Li Hanyan, he did not use his lightness skill very quickly. He traveled along the official road in the morning and rested at night. That evening, the two arrived at a rundown temple. The Buddha statue had disappeared, leaving behind only the broken walls and the temple door. The weather had just started to turn cold, and they needed to cover themselves with blankets at night. A dilapidated house was much better than being in the wilderness. Li started a fire. The blazing flames illuminated Li Hanyan's face. She looked much better now. They traveled for 5 or 6 days. He slowly calmed down. Li felt that the time had come, and he could not delay any longer. He muttered, "Tonight, I'll perform a spell for you and help you build your foundation." That 9 transformation meridian reforming technique. Li Hanyan asked, "What do you think?" "Thank you, big brother do." Li smiled. "After performing the spell, you can start cultivating." He took out a box of needles and gestured for her to sit properly. Then gold, silver, and wooden needles flew up and pierced her body in the blink of an eye. She was frozen and could not move. She lost all feeling and control over her body. It was as if she only had her head left. Chu Li added 2 pieces of wood to the fire. You're going to Snow Lunar Pavilion, a first-rate faction in the martial arts world. It has a strong foundation. If you can cultivate, well, you'll definitely become a martial arts master in the future. She could speak. Is Big Brother Du from Snow Lunar Pavilion? Chu Li shook his head. I'm not. Then, is Big Brother Du related to Snow Lunar Pavilion? Relationship. Chu Li broke into laughter. He looked at the dancing flames, lost in thought. Li Hanyan sighed to herself. It happened again. Along the way, she noticed that Big Brother Li would have this expression from time to time, as if he was missing someone. She guessed that this person might be in Snow Lunar Pavilion. Otherwise, he would not have such an expression at the mention of Snow Lunar Pavilion. She did not disturb his thoughts, and only looked at him quietly. The flames danced merrily on his face. It was as if his mind had flown away, leaving behind only a shell of his body. She did not know which girl could make Big Brother Du miss her so much. She must be extremely beautiful, a rare and extraordinary girl. Xiaoqi's face appeared in Chu Li's mind. He gradually realized the shortcoming of his photographic memory. He could clearly remember every single detail of his past with Xiaoqi. He could not forget even if he wanted to. A certain scene would suddenly appear in his mind without him noticing, like a sharp sword piercing his heart. Time passed unknowingly. When Chu Li woke up, the sky was already bright. He had been sitting in a daze for the whole night. He turned to look at Li Hanyan. Her face was covered with a layer of black oil, and her body was emitting waves of stench. It was extremely unpleasant, and she frowned from the stench. Chu Li smiled and waved his hand to remove the needles. There's a stream below. Go wash up. Li Hanyan did not say a word and hurriedly ran out. Catch! Chu Li threw the bag over. The flying bag caught up to her. She caught the bag and ran even faster. Her face was covered with black oil, and it was burning hot. She really did not have the face to see anyone. It was too embarrassing. She never realized that she smelled so bad. As she ran, she realized that she had changed. She was as light as a swallow, very fast, and her whole body was filled with power. It was as if she could smash a rock with one punch. When she came to the stream, she gave it a try. Her fist was red and swollen, but the rock was unharmed. After a fierce wash, she changed her clothes and let out a long sigh of relief. However, the strange stench still lingered at the tip of her nose. She rubbed her nose, thinking that her nose must have been damaged by the stench. From today onwards, I will teach you a heart technique and a blade technique, Chu Li said as he brought her along on the main road. Li Hanyan turned her head and widened her eyes, overjoyed. Thank you, Big Brother Du. Even if she had not seen it with her own eyes, she knew how powerful Chu Li's blade technique was. The Godly Knife faction, which was a top-notch master in her eyes, was actually annihilated. His blade technique was beyond imagination. Chu Li said, "Your aptitude is not bad, and this heart technique is suitable for you. As for blade technique, when you go to Snow Lunar Pavilion, you can switch to sword technique." He wanted to teach Li Hanyan the Crescent Cryptic. Li Hanyan's aptitude was extremely high, far better than Xue Ling's. Xue Ling needed to train for a few years, but Li Hanyan might only need a year or even less. In the evening, the two did not find a place to sleep, but sat down in a forest. Chu Li taught her the Crescent Cryptic and helped her to channel it. Soon, a trace of Crescent Cryptic inner energy was born, and from then on, it would be much easier for her to cultivate. On the evening of the second day, Chu Li taught her the 7 forms of Godly Knife. On the afternoon of the third day, they stood in front of a stockade village, looking at the stockade village halfway up the mountain. Chapter 260. P.S. The next update is in 2 hours. There will be separate updates in the future. Chu said, "This Bull's Head camp is full of villains. They are full of evil. They haven't been exterminated yet because they are strong and no one dares to provoke them. You have to kill one person today." "Can I do it?" Li Hanyan bit her lip and stared at the camp. Not far from the camp's main gate were 2 towers. They were 10 meters tall. An old man squatted on top of each tower. One leaned against the railing and smoked. He looked relaxed as he stared at Li Hanyan and Chu Li from afar. One was dressed in green and the other in a white robe. They were very eye-catching. Chu Li said, "As long as you use that blade well, you'll be able to do it. If you don't, then, in a fight between 2 people, it's either you die or I die. I won't interfere. You'll either kill him or be killed by him." Li Hanyan turned to look at him. Chu Li said, "Entering the martial arts world is like putting your head on a belt. You'll face death at any time. You'll die sooner or later. It's better to die early and reincarnate early." Li Hanyan pursed her lips and smiled. Chu Li smiled. "Hanyan, I'm not joking with you. I won't help you." "Hey, who are you?" "This is the Bull's Head camp, not a place to play," the old man shouted. Chu Li looked at Li Hanyan. "You think he's a good person, right?" "Isn't he?" Li Hanyan asked in confusion. She felt that the old man was being kind, telling her to leave quickly and stay away from danger. Chu Li smiled. As soon as the old man finished speaking, a young man flipped out from the gate. His body was light and agile. He held a long sword and ran towards the 2. It was a tall, slender, and handsome young man. He wore a sapphire blue robe, and his face was slightly pale. It seemed like he didn't spend much time in the sun. If it wasn't for his gloomy gaze, he would have attracted the hearts of many women. Chu Li said, "Are you clear now? This is the human heart." Li Hanyan bit her thin red lips and glanced at the old man on the tower. The handsome young man's burning gaze swept over Li Hanyan's body. She was thin, but her figure was exquisite. It was already very attractive. He couldn't resist looking at her. Once they entered the stronghold, they would be their toys. They could play with them however they wanted. It didn't matter even if they were broken. Chu Li took a step back, indicating that he did not want to participate, which made the handsome young man look at him with disdain. Li Hanyan slowly pulled out her longsword. He scoffed and said, "Tell me your name." "Hey, this young master is Chang Song." The elegant young man grinned, revealing a row of snow-white teeth. "What is this young lady's name?" Li Hanyan said coldly, "I'm going to kill you." "Hee. All right, come and kill me. Kill me." The handsome young man had a strange smile on his face. "Kill me as many times as you want." Li Hanyan glared at him angrily. She had met many martial artists in the tea house, so she could understand what they were saying. She pursed her lips tightly and took a step forward, slashing down with her blade. The handsome young man took a step back and easily dodged the attack. He chuckled and said, "What a powerful saber technique." Again, Li Hanyan brandished her saber again. She stomped her foot hard and became one with the saber. Suddenly, the saber light exploded and slashed at the handsome young man. "Ah!" The handsome young man screamed, holding his left shoulder as he retreated. Blood gushed out of his left shoulder like a fountain. His eyes were wide open, filled with viciousness, and suddenly became ferocious. He was like a hungry wolf that wanted to devour people. "I will kill you." Every word came out of his mouth, and every word seemed to exude a chill. Li Hanyan snorted softly, her hands going limp. The murderous aura emanating from his body was almost tangible, and Li Hanyan felt cold. Her limbs were weak, and she could not help but want to avoid his gaze. Swoosh! With a soft whistle, the handsome young man stabbed her with his sword. Li Hanyan's eyes widened, and she looked down at the sword in her chest. The handsome young man stuck out his tongue and licked the blood from the corner of his mouth. With a bloodthirsty smile, he said, "I only wanted to toy with you, but you don't know what's good for you, so I'll have to send you on your way." As he spoke, he was about to pull out his sword. Li Hanyan gritted her teeth and swung her saber. Swoosh! The saber moved like lightning, slicing across the handsome young man's neck. His head flew up, and blood gushed out like a fountain. Li Hanyan held the sword in her chest, and her whole body went cold. All her strength seemed to be drained from her chest, and her legs went limp, and she sat on the ground. Chu Li calmly walked in front of her. Li Hanyan looked up at him. "Big brother Du, am I going to die?" Chu Li squatted down and calmly said, "Do you know what you've done wrong?" Li Hanyan shook her head. Chu Li said, "Once we face off, you or he dies. You didn't remember this." "Am I going to see grandfather?" Li Hanyan's vision went black, and her voice was weak, but she showed a smile of relief. Chu Li said, "It's still early." When Li Hanyan heard this, darkness swallowed her, and she fainted. Chu Li took out the spirit blessing pill and fed it to her. He pulled out his sword and pressed on her acupuncture points to stop the bleeding. Then, without caring about the difference between a man and a woman, he tore open her clothes and carefully applied ointment on her chest, ointment from Snow Lunar Pavilion. He dragged Li Hanyan away, and sharp curses followed behind, but he shook them off in the blink of an eye. When Li Hanyan slowly woke up, she found herself lying on the bed. She turned her head and looked around. Chu Li was sitting by the bed, quietly reading a book in his hand. The house was bright, quiet, and peaceful. The birds outside were crisp and pleasant. She struggled, wanting to get up, but her whole body was weak, and she could not move. Chu Li put down the book. "You're awake?" "Big brother Du, I'm not dead?" Li Hanyan asked. Chu Li smiled. "You died once and then came back to life." "I remember I was dead." "Yes, you're not completely dead." Chu Li said, "I took a pill and was saved." "What pill?" Li Hanyan asked. Chu Li smiled. "You don't need to know this. How do you feel?" Li Hanyan nodded lightly. She felt that the world was different from before. She could not put her finger on it, but it felt different. Everything around her became livelier, brighter, and even more moving. She wanted to live a good life. After her grandfather died, she had the will to die. It was meaningless to live alone. She thought it would be better to accompany her grandfather, so that he would not be lonely. If it was not for Big Brother Du's company and care, she would have committed suicide long ago. She did not want to waste his kindness, so she endured it. When she woke up this time, the will to die disappeared, and she wanted to live even more. Chu Li smiled. "From today onwards, you must work hard to cultivate. Don't let anyone kill you." "I know." Li Hanyan nodded hard. Chu Li said, "You can't move now. Just cultivate the crescent cryptic." He had the omniscient mirror, so he could clearly see her thoughts. He knew that she was determined to die, and persuasion was useless. So he came up with this method. This method would be more beneficial for her future cultivation, and she would truly understand how to cultivate the blade. Li Hanyan activated the crescent cryptic, and a cold aura circulated in her body. Her injuries seemed to have lightened. 2 days later, she could cultivate the blade. Early in the morning, the two stood in front of a wooden house in the forest. She wore a black outfit, looking valiant and heroic. Chu Li wore a blue tunic and took off his white robe. This was a wooden house that Chu Li built 2 days ago. It was very simple and could only shelter her from the wind and rain. "Attack," Chu Li said. Li Hanyan's blade flashed, and it hit Chu Li's shoulder. No. Chu Li shook his head, and the long blade was blocked an inch from his shoulder. You're a bit slower again. Li Hanyan slashed again, and it hit his neck, but it was still blocked an inch from his skin. Almost there. Li Hanyan slashed again, and it hit his waist. Almost there. Again. Not bad again. Chu Li activated the omniscient mirror, and he could clearly see the flow of her inner energy, the pulling of her muscles, the twisting of her bones, and even every inch of her body. He pointed out her mistakes and kept correcting her. He wanted her to train the first form of Blade God into an instinctive reaction. Chapter 261. P.S. VIP Group number 129395774. We chat there every day. Rich people give us red packets. 5 days later, at noon, the sun was shining brightly. Li Hanyan arrived outside the Oxhead camp alone. The 2 old men were still at the top of the camp, one leaning on the railing, the other squatting and puffing. Although they were old, their eyesight was not blurry. She saw them as soon as she appeared. "Girl, why are you still here? Hurry up and leave." The puffing old man raised his voice and shouted. As soon as he finished speaking, a young man rushed out of the camp with a long sword in his hand. He was more muscular than the handsome young man from 5 days ago and looked similar. Li Hanyan guessed that they were brothers. He rushed over without a word and stabbed with his sword. Li Hanyan did not dodge and drew her sword to meet the attack. Her body and sword collided, and suddenly the light from the sword exploded, turning into a flash of light that shot towards the young man. The handsome young man hurriedly dodged to the side and stabbed out with his sword. Li Hanyan's back was hit, and her body stagnated. She spun and stabbed again. The light from the sword increased, and she was as fast as lightning. The handsome young man saw that her movement was sluggish and was overjoyed. He raised his sword and stabbed again, wanting to kill her to avenge his brother. He did not expect Li Hanyan's sword to be 2 times faster than before. He could not dodge in time. Uffed! His head flew and blood sprayed like a fountain. Li Hanyan's face paled. She resisted the urge to vomit and turned to run. "Where are you going?" A man rushed out of the camp at an incredible speed. Li Hanyan used her qinggong to escape, but was like a snail in front of him. In the blink of an eye, the man was behind Li Hanyan and struck with his palm. Woo! The light from the sword increased and struck again. The middle-aged man bent his body and dodged agilely. The coldness from the tip of the sword shocked him. A woman with such a shallow cultivation level had such power. It was beyond his imagination. This set of sword techniques was too powerful. He must get it. With that thought in mind, he stopped killing and struck Li Hanyan's right shoulder. Li Hanyan's sword fell to the ground. Feeling hopeless, she turned and ran. Bang! The middle-aged man sealed her acupuncture point with a finger, immobilizing her. The middle-aged man was tall and had a fierce appearance. He stroked his chin and looked at Li Hanyan. "Little girl, what sword technique is this?" "Nameless blade technique." Li Hanyan scoffed. She could turn her head and look around, but she did not see Chu Li. She knew that Chu Li would not make a move. "There's no need to look. No one can save you." The middle-aged man smiled. "Our men have already surrounded them. Your companion is probably dead." Li Hanyan sneered. She was very confident that they would not be able to kill Chu Li. "All right, let's make a deal." The middle-aged man smiled amiably and said, "As long as you hand over the saber technique manual, I will let you go. Otherwise, if I bring you back to the village, you will only be able to be played with by the men. I will kill you after I am done playing with you." Humph! Li Hanyan glared at him stubbornly. The middle-aged man shook his head and said, "At that time, you won't be able to die even if you want to. Think about it. She would be played by hundreds of men. Or hand over the saber manual." Li Hanyan turned her head and looked around, feeling a little hopeless. Brother Du was too cruel. He wouldn't want her to die again, would he? "It seems that you haven't given up yet." The middle-aged man sighed. "All right, then let's enter the stronghold." He carried Li Hanyan and fluttered back to the stronghold gate. The old man, who was smoking on the top of the stronghold, chuckled. "Boss Chi, you're quick to snatch such a beautiful lady. Elder Huang, smoke less." The middle-aged man said impatiently, "Be careful not to die on the pipe. I'll get nervous if I don't smoke for a day. But this young lady's saber technique is very mysterious. Treat her well and ask her." Elder Huang chuckled. "I don't need you to say that." Boss Chi laughed. "Send a few men to serve her. Do you think she won't say anything?" As he said that, he carried Li Hanyan and fluttered into the stronghold into a hall. There were 5 men sitting in the hall. They were curiously looking at Li Hanyan. "Where's that guy?" Boss Chi asked. "Did you kill him? He ran away." A skinny middle-aged man shook his head and sighed. "He's slippery. His light body technique is not bad. Too bad he's a coward. He abandoned this young lady and ran away by himself." Li Hanyan frowned and stared at them. Ever since she died, once, her courage grew. She was fearless in the face of these 5 murderous men. But death was not that scary. The Chong brothers didn't die in vain. Boss Chi sat on the armchair and looked at Li Hanyan, who was standing in the middle. "This saber technique is indeed strange. Look at her cultivation level. She's just started practicing martial arts, right? The Chong brothers have completed their acquired stage. It's a good saber technique." The skinny middle-aged man laughed. "She won't say, right? All right then. I'll have a good chat with her." He stood up and walked in front of Li Hanyan. He looked at her delicate face and shook his head. "What a pity, what a pity. We have the best way to treat women. The most common way is to ride a wooden donkey. We raise a spear and tie the woman to the crossbar so that she can't struggle. Then we let her sit on the tip of the spear. The tip of the spear will go in from the bottom, up to the intestines, to the chest, avoiding the heart, and into the throat. At this point, she won't die. She'll only die when it goes through the top of her head, but we'll go up bit by bit. We'll go up a little every day. After 9 days, it'll reach the top of her head." Li Hanyan glared at him angrily. She felt cold all over. If she were to be tortured that way, she'd rather die early. The skinny middle-aged man sighed. "All these years, there have been at least 80 deaths like this. It's quite pitiful." "Sigh, that's enough, Elder G," Big Brother Chi said. "You look so kind. It's all because of you." The skinny middle-aged man smiled at Li Hanyan. "Young lady, there's another way. I can pierce your ear and put a worm in. Let it crawl around in your brain. You'll suffer so much pain that you'll eventually die from it. Also, shut up." Li Hanyan shouted angrily. "You deserve to die. Sigh, I feel that living is boring, but God just won't accept me." The skinny middle-aged man shook his head and laughed. "I don't have a choice. I can't just commit suicide, right?" Chuli suddenly appeared in a white robe. He stood quietly in front of Li Hanyan. He smiled. "Have you seen it? I'm going to kill them." Li Hanyan said hatefully. Chuli stretched out his hand and opened her acupuncture point. "Your saber technique is still not mature enough. Otherwise, it could make up for the lack of energy. Watch how I perform it." He unsheathed the long saber at his waist. Big Brother Chi, and the others saw his sudden appearance. Their faces changed. They stood up and drew their swords and knives. Someone could sneak in without a sound. He was definitely a master. Swoosh! A cold lightning flashed, and a head flew up. Chu Li walked confidently. With each step, he took ahead. He did it with ease. Li Hanyan blindly followed beside him. She could feel his calmness when he attacked. She used all her strength when she attacked. She did it wrong. Chu Li had taught her before, but she could not understand it. Now that she personally experienced Chu Li's calmness in killing, she understood immediately. Chu Li brought her along and killed everyone in the bull's head camp. The old man who was smoking on the top of the camp was also killed. Only the one who was napping was left. The two of them floated away and continued on their way to the snow lunar pavilion. Along the way, Chu Li killed people like flies. He killed all the evildoers he saw and uprooted the evil forces he saw. There were more than 10 ambushes along the way. He relied on his treasured saber and killed everyone who tried to ambush him. His white robe was still spotless, and not a single drop of blood stained his body. In the past month, Li Hanyan followed Chu Li. She had seen many killings. She was also killing. She became more and more skilled at the first form of Blade of God. It became an instinct. Every slash was the first form of Blade of God. It was powerful. Her ability to kill became stronger and stronger. She was completely numb to killing. She killed people like slaughtering pigs. She did not see them as humans. Suddenly, one day, Chu Li stopped moving forward. Chapter 262. Li Hanyan did not understand and asked Chu Li for the reason. Chu Li explained to her that her murderous aura was too strong now, but she could only release it and could not restrain it. This was not beneficial to her cultivation, as the murderous aura would affect her state of mind. One day, when she could completely restrain her murderous aura and not let it out, she would be calm and gentle, making people feel close and intimate. That would be the day she stepped into the innate mastery's boundary. Li Hanyan seemed to understand. There was no murderous aura on Big Brother. It was like a spring breeze. When he killed, it did not seem like he was killing, but more like he was waving his hand to greet them. With a light greeting, he beheaded them. Li Hanyan obeyed. After 2 days of preaching, Li Hanyan was able to memorize a Buddhist scripture. The two set off again. It was a smooth journey, and they did not meet anyone who deserved to be killed. There were a few villainous mountain strongholds, but when they arrived, they only saw an empty stronghold. They heard the news and ran away in advance. The sun was setting and the sky was red. The two arrived at the foot of the mountain where the snow lunar pavilion was. Chu Li quietly looked at the mountain peak that pierced through the clouds. Deep in thought, Li Hanyan stood at the side, silently, also looking at the mountain peak. This was the faction she would enter in the future. She did not know what it was like, and if she could get used to it. It was a pity that she could not always follow Big Brother Du after a long time. The evening mist became heavy. Chu Li came back to his senses and sighed, "Let's go up the mountain." When the two arrived at the ravine, it was already early evening. The pavilions were brightly lit, and it was as bustling as a heavenly palace. "It's beautiful," Li Hanyan exclaimed. Chu Li smiled. "You will live here from now on. Do you see the lake? You will live there. It really is like a paradise." Li Hanyan smiled. Chu Li smiled. "Big Brother Du." The two disciples in green in the gazebo outside the ravine quickly came up and were overjoyed. "It really is Big Brother Du." Chu Li closed fists saluted and smiled. One of the disciples in green had already turned and rushed into the ravine, while the other shouted happily, "Big Brother Du, you are finally back. We all missed you." Chu Li asked, "How is the ravine recently?" "It's not bad. The disciple in green smiled. The green hill is much more well-behaved. We can all hold our heads up outside. Ha ha! Yang Lingfeng and Zhao Feihu galloped over. Their laughter could be heard first, followed by a group of people. Yang Lingfeng came closer and grumbled, "Brother dear, finally back." Zhao Feihu cupped his fists and smiled. "Brother do." The crowd clustered around Chu Li and Li Hanyan as they entered the ravine. Initially, they wanted to go to the tower for a drink, but Xu Qingdai rushed over and chased them away. She asked him to return to Suru's waterside pavilion to rest. "We'll talk tomorrow." The three returned to the waterside pavilion. Chu Li introduced Li Hanyan. Li Hanyan was a quiet person of few words. She did not speak much. She stood quietly at the side and observed curiously, listening carefully. Let Suru take care of Li Hanyan. He came to Shen Yinghu's waterside pavilion. Every waterside pavilion was brightly lit except for Shen Yinghu's waterside pavilion. She was still sitting in the gazebo, looking at the lake lazily. There were only 2 palace lanterns in the gazebo. The lights were dim and cold. Senior Shun. Chu Li sat opposite her. He used the omniscient mirror and saw the loneliness, and sadness in her heart. Under the dim light, Shen Yinghu looked fairer and more beautiful. Her eyes were clear as water. She supported her chin and looked at him. Regretting, Chu Li said, "Can I return to Snow Lunar Pavilion?" "You." Shen Yinghu sighed. "You're asking for it. Young Qi has already stepped into the Grandmaster's boundary. She's cultivating in isolation and is about to step into the enlightened mastery's boundary." Chu Li said, as expected of the regal sword scripture. "It's all thanks to you." Shen Yinghu said, "You helped her improve by leaps and bounds. Is there something you need?" "I want to ask Senior Shen to take in a disciple," Chu Li said. He told her about Li Hanyan's background. "You're always giving me trouble. I can only entrust it to you." "All right, I'll take her in. Thank you, Senior." You know, the disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion and Green Hill are enemies. They kill each other on sight. She might be in danger. Joining other factions is equally dangerous. But try not to let her go out. "All right, I'll bring her here tomorrow." Chu Li closed fist saluted and left. Seeing his figure gradually disappear, Shen Yinghu sighed and shook her head. She got up and returned to the dark waterside pavilion. Chu Li left Snow Lunar Pavilion the next night. Li Hanyan officially became Shen Yinghu's disciple. She became a disciple of Snow Lunar Pavilion. The disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion were curious and asked her about Chu Li. The name of White Shroud, Shindao Du Feng, was now known throughout the world. His heroic act of challenging a martial arts world's forces shocked the world. Every time he drew his blade, heads would fall to the ground. His cruel methods were shocking. Li Hanyan stayed close to Suru and did not speak much to the crowd. Because of Chu Li, the disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion were very friendly to her. Although she exuded a murderous aura that made people feel cold and uncomfortable when they were near her, they were most curious about how many people she had killed. For the past 3 days, Li Hanyan chanted for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night. Everyone was surprised and asked for the reason. Li Hanyan smiled and said she was following Big Brother Du's orders. She did not know why. Everyone guessed that it was because her murderous nature was too strong. She wanted to use Buddhism to dispel it. Li Hanyan's waterside pavilion was not finished yet, so she stayed with Suru. That night, she practiced her blade technique and returned to the waterside pavilion. She saw Suru staring at a blue shirt in a daze. Sister Du, is this Big Brother Du's?" Li Hanyan asked curiously. Suru nodded. Yes. Big brother Du likes to wear white shirts, Li Hanyin said. Suru smiled. This was his old shirt. Why did it suddenly change? Suru sighed and shook her head. I heard that Big brother Du has a fiancé. Is it true? She had already found out about Chu Li. Big brother Du's fiancé was Du Xia, Du Qiu's sister. Unfortunately, she did not get to meet Big brother Du's fiancé. She did not know what kind of person she was. Yes. Suru nodded lightly. Big brother Du seems to be very sad. Is it because of Sister Du Xia? Li Hanyin asked softly. Suru looked at her. Li Hanyin said, I think Big brother Du misses Sister Du Xia. Suru was suddenly a little upset. She shook her head. Who knows? This is between the two of them. No one knows. Li Hanyin said, Sister Du Xia must be very beautiful. She is. Suru scoffed. Li Hanyin sighed. To make Big brother Du miss her so much, Sister Du Xia is so lucky. Suru did not know what to say. She sighed. Don't mention Du Xia in front of Big brother Du. Why? Li Hanyin asked. Their matter is very troublesome. It's hard to explain. Just don't mention it. Suru scoffed, lest he gets upset. All right. Li Hanyin said, I wonder when Big brother Du will come. He's very busy. He won't be able to come for a while. Train hard and don't let him down. Chapter 263. 2 days after Chu Li left, Li Hanyin was summoned to Shin Inghu's waterside pavilion. The sun shone brightly, and the lake was clear. A gentle breeze blew from the lake to the pavilion. Shin Inghu sat in the pavilion in a white tunic, lazily sizing up Li Hanyin. Li Hanyin lowered her eyes and stood quietly, as if she was one with the vermilion pillar in the pavilion. Shin Inghu said, Your big brother, Du, told me not to let you out of the valley. He's afraid that you'll be in danger. Li Hanyin pursed her lips. Shin Inghu smiled. I've heard about Du Feng too. He's a madman who kills people like flies. You can't learn from him. Li Hanyin frowned slightly and held back from retorting. She felt that brother Du did a good job killing them. Those scumbags deserve to be killed. If they were not killed, who knows how many innocent and kind people would be harmed. Brother Du was doing justice on behalf of the heavens. Shin Inghu said, He only dared to do that because he's highly skilled in martial arts. How many people want to kill him now? If it were you, you wouldn't live more than 2 days. Don't learn from him. Li Hanyin sighed softly. What heart technique do you want to cultivate? Shin Inghu said, The heart technique you're cultivating now is not bad. It doesn't lose to Snow Lunar Pavilion's heart technique. I'll listen to Master. Then cultivate this. Du Feng always has a reason for doing things. Shin Inghu sighed. How's he doing? Li Hanyin was stunned and raised her head in confusion. Shin Inghu said, How's his mood? Forget it. He wouldn't have killed so many people if he was in a good mood. Those people are really unlucky to have met his blade. She understood that Chu Li's massacre was to vent his anger. Li Hanyin said, What happened to Brother Du? Poor guy. Shin Inghu pursed her lips and smiled, disappointed in love. Li Hanyin's eyes widened in disbelief. Shin Inghu looked at her expression and giggled. Li Hanyin lowered her head in embarrassment, still in disbelief. Could it be Du Xia? Which woman could reject a person like Brother Du? Du Xia was too blind, wasn't she? It's not what you think. Shin Inghu stopped giggling. Her cheeks were flushed from laughing so much that she looked tender and alluring. He left Du Xia on his own accord. Why? Li Hanyin asked. Du Xia's kung fu requires her to be free of worries, to be separated from her emotions and desires. In order for Du Xia to become an expert stronger than him, he took the initiative to break up. Shen Inghu smiled lazily. Don't you think he's stupid? So that's how it is. Li Hanyan was surprised and lamented. Big brother Du must be feeling very bitter. He's a fool. Shen Inghu sighed. If a woman trains to be invincible, she can only live a lonely life. Your big brother Du is harming others and himself. Li Hanyan said, Brother Du's martial arts will definitely surpass Sister Du Xia's. Shen Inghu pursed her lips and laughed. You little girl, your knowledge is limited. What do you know? In today's world, who can defeat Big Brother Du? Li Hanyan was unconvinced and said, if there really is, they would have jumped out long ago. He is now a grandmaster. Du Xia is going to become an enlightened master. Shen Inghu waved her hand and smiled. I haven't been this happy in a long time. All right, I'll do as you say. Let's practice what we were before. Do you want to practice saber or sword? Big brother, Du wants me to practice my sword. Li Hanyan said, I'll practice my saber technique when I'm free. He's afraid that your murderous aura is too strong. Shen Inghu smiled. Go with Du Qiu to Whitebone Mountain in 2 days. Send a letter and get some fresh air. It's not good to be cooped up in the valley all day. Green Hill was at its most obedient now. They had not recovered yet, and dared not cause any trouble. Therefore, it was safe to leave the valley. Chu Li asked Li Hanyan to leave the valley, not that she should not. Yes, Li Hanyan said. Shen Inghu waved her hand. Go, just follow Du Qiu. Yes. Li Hanyan closed fist saluted and left. In the evening, Chu Li bathed in the sunset glow and stood outside Green Hill Town. The majestic city gate and towering city walls were not inferior to Chongming Town. The city was twice as big as Chongming Town, and it was even more prosperous and lively. He left Snow Lunar Pavilion and used his light body technique to travel quickly. In a few days, he arrived at Green Hill Town. He did not stop along the way. He was too lazy to kill. After looking around, he walked towards the gate of Green Hill Town. There were 2 strong guards at the gate. They were fierce, and their eyes were sharp. They looked at Chu Li from head to toe, and finally, their eyes landed on the blade at his waist. Chu Li's white robe was spotless. He did not look like a martial artist at all. There were no changes in his temples and the top of his head. His eyes were not bright, and his spirit was not full. It was obvious that he was not a martial artist. The 2 guards looked at his blade and scoffed. They waved their hands to let him in. The person in front of Chu Li was interrogated. He was a martial artist and was full of spirit. After the 2 guards interrogated him, they gave him a warning. Green Hill Town had its own rules. Violence was strictly forbidden. Once it was used, the lightest punishment would be the crippling of martial arts and throwing out of the town. The heaviest punishment would be death. The town defense public house and High Duke's public house would execute the punishment at the same time. There was no chance of survival. If you wanted to live, you had to tuck your tail between your legs. The martial artist was annoyed by the questioning. After a warning, he entered the town angrily. Chu Li entered the town. The main street was crowded with people and carriages. The sounds of hawking, bargaining, quarreling, and children playing were mixed together with the aroma of food. It was like a tidal wave rushing toward Chu Li. Chu Li walked slowly, feeling the bustle of the town. The lively places were actually similar. It was as if he was walking in Chongming Town. After walking along the main street for a while, he found a restaurant, Mountain Beyond Mountain Restaurant. It was towering with 3 floors and had an unusual style. Standing on the 3rd floor, one could overlook the entire Green Hill Town. He went upstairs and ordered a few dishes. He sat near the window and drank by himself while enjoying the scenery. He also listened to the conversations of the people around him. It was a different kind of fun. After these days of adjustment, he walked out of the helpless and angry predicament. He completely put aside his negative thoughts and regained his determination. He had to work hard and reach the enlightened mastery's boundary before Shao-Chi. The regal sword scripture was powerful, but if he wanted to break the shackles of the scripture and regain Shao-Chi's heart, she would not be able to escape his clutches. Everyone, have you heard? The White Shroud Chief's surname is Du. His name is Du Feng. This isn't considered new, right? All right, this doesn't count. I'll tell you something new. I'm sure you haven't heard of it before. Hurry up. If you really haven't heard of it, I'll treat you to a meal. All right, thank you very much. If you keep us guessing, we won't listen anymore. All right, you guys are too impatient. All right, I'll talk. Elder Meng, you're asking for a beating. Sai, you guys, I'll talk. Do you know where Du Feng is from? Where? I don't know either. Everyone, listen to me. Don't fight. I'll beat you to death if you keep us guessing. All right. Du Feng is related to Snow Lunar Pavilion. Snow Lunar Pavilion practices swordsmanship, right? Snow Lunar Pavilion was a famous first-rate faction in the Ji Dynasty's martial arts world. I heard that Du Feng's fiancé is a disciple of Snow Lunar Pavilion. Oh, that's possible. Someone answered, the female disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion are all beauties. Which young master wouldn't be tempted? Unfortunately, Snow Lunar Pavilion is very strict. There's no way to take advantage of them. I say, these women are too fierce. No matter how beautiful they are, they can't be touched. That's because you don't know the beauty of martial arts masters. No matter how fierce a woman is, once she marries into the family, will she beat up her husband? With such a martial arts master at home, you'll feel more at ease, right? You're right. The female disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion are indeed in high demand. Du Feng's wife is a disciple of Snow Lunar Pavilion. This is big news. What's the use of knowing? Someone curled his lips in disdain. Du Feng is not easy to deal with. Snow Lunar Pavilion is even harder to deal with. Who would dare to mess around? Where did this Du Feng come from? Who knows? Maybe he's a disciple of some hidden faction? Usually, there's no lack of people like this who amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, however. His swordsmanship is too powerful. Thousands of people have died in his hands, right? He's really a ruthless killer. If you line up 1,000 people and cut them down one by one, I won't be able to do it. Chu Li frowned as he listened to their news and shook his head. There was really no useful news. Chapter 264. P.S. If there are 6 updates, then the update time will be 8, 10, 14, 16, 18, 20, 6 time points. If it's the 3rd update, it will be updated at 8, 14, and 20. Since I'm working so hard, please subscribe. I really need everyone's support. What kind of secret is that? Which month doesn't he steal a girl? Eldest young master is wise and powerful. Is there no way to deal with him? How do I treat it? Someone scoffed. What's the use of eldest master being wise? The High Duke has the final say. He spoils his second son. What can he do? It's true that a kind father spoils his son. Forget it. The High Duke's public house isn't too bad. If we take a lady back to the public house, we won't harm her life. Instead, she'll become a maid of the High Duke's public house. There are a lot of ladies waiting for second young master to come and take them back. Bullsh *T. You were clearly trying to snatch him away, but you turned it into a good thing. Who can resist the recognition of the country? What else could he do if he didn't accept his fate? Besides, it's not easy to become a maid in the public house. It's very difficult to become one. In my opinion, we should let that white Shroud Shindao come over and teach second young master a lesson. Humph! Whenever the white Shroud Shindao makes a move, his head would be separated from his body. Someone scoffed in disdain. No matter how powerful the white Shroud Shindao is, would he dare to offend the house of High Dukes? He must be tired of living. That's true. The High Duke's public house is too overbearing. No one dares to provoke them. I don't think so. Looking at the white Shroud Shindao's stance, he isn't afraid of anyone. The Godly Knife sect isn't small either. Wouldn't he be able to wipe them out just like that? Don't forget that the leader of the Godly Knife faction is a grandmaster. To be able to kill a grandmaster, one can indeed run amok in the world. Other than the emperor, no one can do anything to him. Who said that? Who? Lord Zeng of the Great Lane Temple. That's true. At the mention of the Tempest Temple, they immediately fell silent. No matter how powerful a grandmaster was, it would be useless against the Tempest Temple. The Tempest Temple's antique martial arts were profound and powerful, and they could defeat a grandmaster. There was no lack of grandmasters among the traitorous disciples of the Tempest Temple, but all of them ended up being escorted back to the temple and dealt with according to the temple rules. Over the years, many grandmasters had died. Most of them were killed by the Great Tempest Temple. Moreover, it was rumored that the Great Tempest Temple had an enlightened master. Chu Li frowned at the mention of the Tempest Temple. He thought of the strange technique that Fa Yuan and the others had displayed. If they were to meet again, Chu Li dared not say that he would definitely win. The Tempest Temple's foundation was too deep, and they had an endless stream of mystical arts that were impossible to defend against. Look, look! Second young master is stealing a woman again. Someone shouted. Whoosh! People ran to the window and huddled together to look down. Chu Li's table was next to the window. Soon, 5 to 6 men crowded around him and peered down. Chu Li took a step back and moved away from the window. He sat on the other side of the table and used his divine perception. Lu Yushu was sitting on a horse. He was handsome and elegant. His horse was snow white. There was not a single strand of white hair on his body. His eyes shone with spiritual energy. The white horse walked slowly along the street lazily. Beside Lu Yushu were 2 elderly men. In front of him were 4 young bodyguards. Behind him was a small green sedan, carried by 4 strong bearers. A woman's sobs could be heard coming from inside the sedan. It sounded like she was complaining. His omniscient mirror clearly saw that there was a beautiful girl in the sedan. Her acupuncture points were sealed, and she sat motionless. Her eyes were red and swollen. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Chu Li frowned. The dignified Ren public house had the wise and mighty Lu Yulo and the meticulous Lu Yurong. How could she tolerate such a spoiled brat to ruin the reputation of the public house? What a joke! The public house's reputation in the martial arts world was that of a hawk and a hound. They were condemned by thousands of people. In addition to Lu Yushu's behavior, they hated him even more. It even provoked public anger. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and suddenly frowned. He saw the people on the street pointing and gossiping, but they did not look disgusted. Instead, they looked happy, as if they were envious of the person in the sedan. This thought made him shake his head helplessly. The human heart was really hard to understand. Which family did he steal this time? Who knows? He's really lucky. Not necessarily. What if he doesn't want to enter the public house? Who doesn't want to enter the public house? It's just that this way of entering the public house is a little ugly. No matter what, as long as he can get in. This girl has such a good life. From now on, she can wear silk and satin, eat meat, live in luxury. She's ascending to the heavens in one step. Chu Li pressed on his knife, and shook his head with a bitter smile. Lu Yushu swaggered on his horse. The people automatically opened up a path and watched them leave. Brother, this is my first time in the public house. I would like to ask what happened just now. Chu Li stopped a young man and smiled. He obviously kidnapped a girl. Why isn't anyone angry? This young man had thick eyebrows and big eyes. He scratched his head and sat opposite him. He sighed. I'd be lying if I said I'm not angry. Chu Li nodded. This was normal. However, other than this matter, the rest of the High Duke's public house is very good. No violence is allowed in the city. Those martial arts masters are obedient, and everyone is not afraid of them. The honest young man smiled. Just this alone is enough to make everyone very grateful. Chu Li nodded. Chongming Town was like this. Green Mountain Town was the same. The young man continued. And under the public house's deterrence, the mayor and inspector are very obedient. They are submissive to the people. If it wasn't for the public house suppressing them, there wouldn't be such a good thing. Is the High Duke's public house that powerful? Chu Li laughed. The young man said, other public houses can't do it. Our Rin public house can. Why is that? Lady Lu is very powerful. The young man gave a thumbs up. He looked at her with admiration. Lady Lu is very skillful. Men can't compare to her. In the beginning, the mayor and inspector were very dissatisfied. But after being taught a few lessons by Lady Lu, they finally became obedient. I see. Chu Li nodded slowly. If it was Lu Yurong, he would not be surprised. Lu Yurong was very skillful. It was enough to subdue 2 old officials. In short, other than the second young master of the public house, Master Xiao and Lady Lu are very good. The young man sighed. Everyone has their flaws. The public house is the same. Everyone can tolerate it. Thank you for telling me. Chu Li smiled. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, Lu Yushu was still riding his horse along the main street. He was lazy and arrogant. He did not look at the people around him. Lu Yushu laughed coldly in his heart. Laugh all you want. If I'm afraid of you laughing, I won't be the master of the public house. Humph! A bunch of stupid commoners who don't know anything. How would they know my difficulties? Sigh. It was all because of little sister. She made him the scapegoat. She made him do this kind of dirty work. He could only blame his poor birth. Little sister also knows how to make a mess. But she is spoiled by the old man. Everyone has to listen to her. If this continues, who will be the master of the public house? Hee, big brother must be troubled too. He can't wait to marry her off. Too bad. She doesn't like men. She hates men. She only likes women. These women were snatched by him. But now they belong to little sister. How unfair. Chu Li was shocked when he saw this. The beauties that Lu Yushu snatched belong to Lu Yurong. Lu Yurong likes women. Chu Li touched his chin and smiled. This is interesting. Chapter 265. Chu Li saw a skinny young man standing in front of the 4 public house protectors, dressed in white, with a long blade at his waist, staring coldly at Lu Yushu. The white horse stopped on its own. Lu Yushu lazily glanced at the skinny young man, scoffed. Who are you? I am Du Feng. The skinny young man shouted. White Shroud Chief. It's White Shroud Chief. The people around were shocked, staring at Du Feng curiously. Chu Li was stunned too. White Shroud Chief. He focused his gaze, using the omniscient mirror to scan this White Shroud Chief. He immediately shook his head and sneered. White Shroud Chief. You're that White Shroud Chief. Lu Yushu lazily sized him up, shook his head. You don't look like much, and you're wearing a white robe. I hate men who wear white robes the most. The skinny young man scoffed. The dignified public house. How dare you kidnap a woman in a peaceful day? Where are the laws of the country? The laws of the country can't control your public house, but White Shroud Chief, will do something about it. Let her go. Ha ha, how arrogant. Lu Yushu looked up to the sky and laughed. He was overjoyed. The skinny young man stared at him expressionlessly. Lu Yushu laughed for a while, then shook his head. Hey, White Shroud Chief, have you fallen for this beauty? It's okay. I'm in a good mood today. I'll give her to you. Shut up. The skinny young man scoffed coldly. I just can't bear to see you kidnap a woman. How did you fall for her? Don't talk nonsense. If she's an ugly girl, would you still save her? Of course. You're so righteous. Lu Yushu shook his head, chuckled. We're all men, we understand. I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. Are you going to hand her over or not? The skinny young man scoffed. If you hand her over, I'll spare your life today, or else, don't blame me for being merciless, I'll cut off your head. I'd like to see how capable you are. Lu Yushu lazily waved his hand. The elder in black next to him floated out and came before the skinny young man. You are the white-robed Shindao. You're a grandmaster, yet you're bowing and scraping to serve others. You're a disgrace to the martial arts world. The skinny young man sneered. Don't blame me for being merciless when I chop off your head. Guy Death. Lucien grinned. Was he jealous of the broken bones and flying mercifully? He punched out. There was a muffled bang sound in the air. It was like an explosion. The thin young man sneered and unsheathed his long saber. A silver streak of light slashed down. Bang! The blade and the fist collided, and the force of the collision spread out in all directions. The clothes of the surrounding people fluttered loudly as if a gale had blown past. They involuntarily took a few steps back as if pushed by the tide. He staggered. Everyone exclaimed in admiration, as expected of a grandmaster. Impressive! Amazing! Good fist technique. The thin young man shouted, and the blade light swept towards the black-robed old man like a storm. Everyone was dazzled, and all that was left was praise. What a powerful blade technique! What a fast blade! As expected of the White Shroud divine blade. Ding, 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 ding. The black-robed old man's fists accurately hit the blade. With each punch, the dazzling blade light dimmed a little, then dazzled again, and dimmed again. Flickering and flickering. The people watching were dazzled. Lu Yushu lazily looked at the field, curled his lips, and said loudly, The White Shroud divine blade is only SOO. Humph! The thin young man snorted coldly. The blade light exploded, and his speed increased by a notch. Chuli squinted his eyes. Hey! The black-robed old man growled. His fists expanded, and his speed increased. He waved both fists, and the sky was filled with fist shadows. It looked like there were dozens of hands, completely covering his body. He blocked the blade light. The frenzied blade was extremely fast, but it could not break through the blockade of the fists. Every blade was hit by the fists, and his momentum could not increase. He forcefully suppressed it. There were many masters in the crowd. Seeing the two were evenly matched, they could not help but whisper to each other. Doesn't the White Shroud divine blade only use one blade to kill? Nonsense! That's for those below the Grandmaster level. Can a Grandmaster be killed with one blade? That's true. One blade can kill a Grandmaster. You have to be at least an enlightened master. The Grandmaster of the House of High Dukes. How bad can he be? This old man is Hani Meng, the world's top master. The White Shroud divine blade can block so many attacks. He's considered good. Pity what? The White Shroud divine blade's undefeated legend is probably going to end. How can there be an undefeated master? He knows there's a tiger in the mountain, but he still went to the tiger's mountain. This courage and spirit, we still admire him. How can we have the guts to go against the House of High Dukes? It's important to know yourself to go against the House of High Dukes. Unless you live in seclusion, how else can you survive? Sigh. The crowd discussed, their eyes still fixed on the field. The thin young man's blade technique was getting sharper, the opposite fist shadows were also getting denser. Ding! In a long, soft ring, the thin young man's long blade flew out. The people all moved away, afraid of being hit by the blade and hurt. Ding! The long blade flipped in the air for 2 feet and fell on the bluestone floor. The crowd suddenly went silent, staring at the thin young man in shock. The awe-inspiring white shroud divine blade, who was like the sun in the sky, was defeated in front of their eyes. This made them feel a little complicated, but also more respectful towards the House of High Dukes. The master, who was rumored to be like a god, almost like a martial arts legend, when faced with the master of the House of High Dukes, he could only admit defeat. The House of High Dukes was like a towering mountain, unsurmountable. Ha ha! Lu Yushu laughed. White shroud divine blade. To be able to exchange so many blows with Elder Han. You're quite capable. I've always liked talented people. I cherish them. The thin young man's face was gloomy. He stared at him without moving. Lu Yushu smiled. How about this if you come to our House of High Dukes, 10,000 silvers a month, and other elixirs? The crowd was in an uproar. 10,000 silvers. 10,000 silvers. That was an unbelievable amount of money. Lu Yushu continued, if you want to eradicate the injustice in the world, then come to the House of High Dukes, those martial arts masters who use their martial arts to commit crimes. With their high level of martial arts, they're all targets of the House of High Dukes. If you come, the House of High Dukes' power will increase greatly. We'll punish the evil. How about that? The thin young man's face was gloomy. He hesitated. The crowd could not help but think along Lu Yushu's words. Although the second young master was a playboy, what he said was reasonable. The House of High Dukes still had a good reputation. They were the public enemy of the martial arts masters. How about this? Lu Yushu said loudly. 20,000 silvers. I'll give you 20,000 silvers a month. This way you can help a lot of poor people. You can do good and help the poor. You can also get rid of evil. Why not? The thin young man was still hesitating. Lu Yushu jumped down from his horse, approached him. He smiled. Then it's decided. Our House of High Dukes is thirsty for a master like you. Little sister will definitely like you and put you in an important position. Brother Du, the black-robed elder, Han Yimeng said lightly, we entered the House of High Dukes not for glory and wealth. With our abilities, glory and wealth are at our fingertips. It's only for a responsibility to punish the evil. If we do it alone, we'll be weak. With the help of the House of High Dukes, we can get rid of more evildoers. All right, the thin young man sighed. Then I'll give it a try. P.S. Everyone's monthly tickets are awesome, subscriptions are awesome, gifts are awesome too. Thank you very much. Originally, I wanted to make a list of gifts at the end of every chapter, but after thinking about it, it's like a list of the staff in a movie. Only those on the list will watch it. When my hands and eyes hurt from writing and my heart is tired, I'll look at the monthly tickets on my phone and go to the backstage to see the list of gifts. Then I'll have the motivation to work harder. Every monthly ticket giver can see it on the Writer's Assistant app. Every gift giver can be seen backstage, grateful, happy. The only way to repay is to write harder. Chapter 266. Good, that's more like it. From now on, we'll drink from the same bowl and kill the thieves. Han Yimeng smiled. Drink from the same bowl and kill the thieves. The skinny young man closed fists saluted. That's what I want. Guards, let this lady go. Lu Yushu turned his head and ordered to be able to invite the white shroud Shin Dao into the public house. Congratulations. Let this lady go and let her choose. The 4 porters who had been carrying the palanquin put down the green palanquin and lifted the curtains, revealing a pitiful beauty. One of the porters touched the lady's shoulder. She trembled and slowly stood up. Lu Yushu sized her up, feeling pity. Such a beauty did not belong to him, but to his little sister. It was truly a reckless waste of God's gift. Little beauty, we'll let you go today. Lu Yushu smiled. Tell me, do you want to go home or follow me and become a maid in the public house? The beautiful lady lowered her head. When the people saw such a beauty, they all sighed. No wonder second young master would fall for her and snatch her away. Little beauty, if you want to go home, I'll send someone to send you back. I won't snatch you away anymore. Don't worry, although Lu Yushu, am a man of my words. Lu Yushu said frivolously. His face was full of smiles. However, he was handsome. His actions did not offend the ladies. Many ladies on the street wished they could swap places with this beauty and be snatched back by second young master Lu. If you want to go back with me, then be a maid. Lu Yushu chuckled and said, the maids of our public house are not ordinary. Other than me, no one can bully you, and outside of the public house, no one would dare to touch you. Think about it. Do you want to stay in a poor and dirty house or enter the public house and live a life of luxury? You only have one chance. He smiled strangely. He was curious. How would this little beauty choose? I want to go back. The beautiful lady said softly. Lu Yushu was stunned. He looked at her in shock, but he smiled. You're quite ambitious. All right. Everyone has their own ambitions. We can't force them. Since she doesn't want to live a good life, then forget it. Send her back. Yes, young master, the four porters said solemnly. Everyone on the street cheered. Lu Yushu silently scolded them for being a bunch of idiots. He lazily ignored them and leaped onto his horse. Brother Du, then I shall await your arrival in the residence. Wait. Just as he was about to return to the residence, Chu Li appeared. He was dressed in a white robe with a treasured saber at his waist. He stood quietly on the street, blocking their way. Who are you? Lu Yushu frowned and shouted. Don't think that the second master is easy to talk to. Get lost. Chu Li gave a fist salute and said calmly, I'm Du Feng. Du Feng? Everyone was shocked. They all looked at the skinny young man. The slender young man frowned and scoffed. Du Feng? You are also called Du Feng? Chu Li looked at him with a faint smile. Chung Gueha, when did you change your name to Du Feng? You even changed your surname. You don't even want your ancestors anymore? You, who the hell are you? Chung Gueha snapped. What nonsense are you talking about? Chu Li sighed. Chung Gueha, aren't you the rank 5 protector of the House of High Dukes? I am Du Feng, Chung Gueha said in a low voice. Not Chung Gueha. Chu Li turned to look at Lu Yushu. What did I do to deserve the House of High Dukes' attention, to ruin my reputation? Who the hell are you? Lu Yushu scoffed. Who sent you to defame the House of High Dukes? Sigh. Chu Li shook his head. He suddenly took a step forward and appeared in front of Chung Gueha. A flash of the blade. Chung Gueha's belt split open, and a shiny silver waist tag fell to the ground with a clang. Everyone was in an uproar. They were very familiar with this waist tag. The House of High Dukes Protector silver tag was very powerful in the Green Hill Road. When the silver tag appeared, it was unimpeded. Chung Gueha did not move and was stunned. Chu Li's flash of the blade kept flashing in his mind. His whole body felt cold, and his body went limp. When he realized the waist tag fell to the ground, he quickly picked it up. Chu Li extended his blade and picked up the silver tag with the tip of the blade. It rolled in the air, allowing everyone to see it clearly. One side was branded with the words Ren Public House. The other side was branded with the words Chung Gueha. Each side had 5 stars. Lu Yushu secretly scolded him for being an idiot. He actually brought the waist tag with him to do this kind of thing. He could not be any more stupid. Little sister also miscalculated. How could she use such an idiot? What if he accidentally dropped it during the fight? But he did not know that Chungueha was not stupid. He was too smart. When he received this task, he was anxious. This matter could be faked for real. Lady wanted him to act as if Dufeng was defeated and joined the House of High Dukes. But what if he, the fake Dufeng, was killed during the fight? Lady's plans were always changing and changed randomly. There was no such thing as a fixed plan. With this waist tag, in case they were faking it for real, he could throw the waist tag out. Maybe he would have a chance of survival. Everyone started discussing and looked at Chu Li curiously. It seemed that this was the real Dufeng, the White Shroud Shindao. Yes, he was really good plotting against the White Shroud Shindao like this, attacking his prestige, killing without spilling any blood. It must be the clever third lady. Chu Li held onto his sword and looked at Lu Yushu. Second young master, don't you want to give me an explanation? Explanation? Lu Yushu scoffed indifferently. What explanation? Using my name to do something improper. Chu Li shook his head and said, the House of High Dukes move is petty. It's the work of a woman, right? So what? Lu Yushu pouted and scoffed. Dufeng, do you want to enter the House of High Dukes? When he heard Chu Li scolding third lady for being petty, he was secretly pleased. Chu Li sighed. I am a man from the mountains. I'm used to being lazy. I can't be restrained. I can't be ordered around by others. I can only decline second young master's good intentions. That's a pity. Lu Yushu said, the door of our House of High Dukes will always be open to you. Chu Li smiled. Second young master, let's not talk about this. Let's talk about him impersonating me. Are you going to let it go just like that? Second young master? Oh, I won't let it go. What do you want? Lu Yushu smiled. Do you really want to be the enemy of the House of High Dukes? Chu Li said, I cherish my reputation. I want to compete with this senior. Elder Han? Lu Yushu looked at Han Yimeng. He was also curious about how strong Chu Li's martial arts was. From his appearance, Dufeng looked like someone who didn't know martial arts. His white robe fluttered without a speck of dust. He didn't look like a martial artist at all. He looked more like a scholar. Han Yimeng said in a low voice, All right, then let's learn from each other. Chu Li closed fist saluted. Everyone immediately retreated. This was the real White Shroud Shindao. He was no joke. He killed people like cutting melons and vegetables. Han Yimeng fiercely threw a punch. Chu Li's body and blade became one. He turned into a flash of light, instantly cutting through the fist force. The blade slashed across Han Yimeng's neck. Chu Li sheathed his blade and returned to his original position. Han Yimeng didn't move. It was like he was frozen. He slowly touched his neck. There was still a faint chill, but his neck was smooth and flat. There was no injury, but his neck was clearly cut by a blade just now. Chu Li calmly said, The back of the blade. Han Yimeng looked at Chu Li in shock. Lu Yushu's expression also changed slightly. Chapter 267. P.S. Do you think you're different? You're just a mortal. I mistook Dufeng for Lu Feng in the previous chapter. Please forgive me. I sincerely apologize. Chu Li shook his head. Protectors of the House of High Dukes are just SOSO. Let me experience your skills. Another elder in linen stepped forward and closed fist saluted. I'm Lu Zhiji, also surnamed Lu. Chu Li nodded. Please. Lu Zhiji unsheathed his sword and slowly pointed it at Chu Li. The blade was like a pool of spring water. With a hum, the blade trembled like a snake that came alive. It shot out fiercely and instantly pierced Chu Li's chest. Chu Li turned sideways and swung his blade. A flash of light streaked across Lu Zhiji's neck. The long sword pierced through thin air. Lu Zhiji froze and did not move. After a moment, he touched his neck. His face was pale. Fortunately, it was the back of the blade. Otherwise, his head would have been removed. This Du Feng's blade technique was amazing. Chu Li looked at Lu Yushu and calmly took a step forward. "What are you doing?" Lu Yushu was shocked by the flash of the blade. Seeing this, he shouted, "Du Feng, you really have some skills." Chu Li said, "Second young master, your family is very knowledgeable. How about a spar?" "Du Feng, you want to go against the House of High Dukes?" Lu Yushu shouted. Chu Li shook his head. "Second young master, the House of High Dukes made the first move. I had no choice but to fight back. The House of High Dukes is as tyrannical as the rumors say." "Stop!" Suddenly, there was a shout from afar. Chu Li turned his head and smiled. The people around them exclaimed in surprise, and they quickly made way for him. 3 people slowly walked over. The one in front was a graceful woman. Her face was covered with a white veil. Only a pair of eyes as clear as autumn water could be seen. As she looked around, her eyes were full of charm. Behind her were 2 elders. One was Shi Wu. His expression was solemn. The other one was familiar to Chu Li. He had seen him twice. He was the top master of the House of High Dukes. The 2 followed her step by step and respectfully followed behind her. Her identity was obvious. Lady Lu Yurong of the Ren Public House. Lu Yurong was covered by a white veil, but she still made people feel that she was a great beauty. They could not take their eyes off her. "I dare not." Chu Li closed fist and pretended not to know. "Lady, you are—" "I dare not claim to be invincible." Chu Li closed fist, saluted, and pretended not to know anything. "May I know who you are?" "I am Lu Yurong." Lu Yurong curtsied. "Mr. Du, it was indeed my idea to find someone to impersonate Mr. Du and enter the public house." "Lu Yurong," Yu Lu said. Yu Lu." Lu Yurong rolled her eyes. "I admire your great name and would like to invite you to join the public house as a high official to help the public house eliminate evil and to cleanse the martial arts world." "Miss Lu, you are of noble birth. I am not worthy of your hospitality, but you are only inviting me with such a wonderful method. I cannot accept it." His gaze pierced into Lu Yurong's eyes like lightning. Lu Yurong's eyes were watery and moist, unaffected. "Yes, it's my fault. Please be magnanimous and don't take offense." You phone. "I wouldn't dare." Chu Li waved his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, mister. How about I play host?" Lu Yurong said. Chu Li shook his head. "There's no need for that. I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." "Wait." Lu Yurong waved her hand. "If you go to the House of High Duke for a drink, you will have concerns. How about this? I will prepare a banquet at the Merciful Heart brothel. Sir, please condescend yourself. I have something important to ask you." "If that's the case, very well." Chu Li closed fist saluted. "Sir, please." Lu Yurong nodded lightly. The surrounding people looked at their disappearing silhouettes and discussed. "Miss Lu is indeed extraordinary. You know when to yield and when to stand tall. As the lady of the House of High Dukes, why do you need to be so courteous?" He must have felt that this white shroud Shindao is indeed powerful. That's why he acted like this. If the white-robed divine blade wasn't here, I'm afraid his reputation would already be, "I didn't even see how the saber was executed." I didn't see it clearly either. The people discussed animatedly, but all of them were envious and jealous of Chu Li. To be personally invited by Miss Lu and to have such an attitude, he really did not waste his life. He did not waste his time as a man. Chu Li and Lu Yurong sat opposite each other. The two of them were in a private room on the fourth floor of the Merciful Heart brothel. Through the window, they could overlook the streets below, the buildings. When the window was closed, the room was silent, as if it was two different worlds. Lu Yushu had already returned with a face full of dirt. Shi Wu took the plates from the waiter and personally brought them to the table. He placed them one by one and filled the silver cups for the two of them. His movements were smooth and steady. Lu Yurong was wearing a bluish-white gown. She had already taken off her veil, revealing her beautiful face. Her charming face revealed a dignified and quiet temperament. Sitting quietly at the table, she had a sense of elegance and nobility. She raised her hand. Shi Wu bowed and retreated to the back, motionless. The room was elegantly decorated, hiding luxury in the plain. Ingenious. A faint fragrance wafted from Lu Yurong's body, provoking wild and fanciful thoughts. Chu Li sat calmly opposite her, his expression peaceful. Lu Yurong lifted the silver cup and revealed a faint smile. "This cup I would like to apologize to Sir. My methods were not open and above board, damaging Sir's clean reputation." She raised her sleeve to cover her face and drained the cup in one gulp. Shi Wu stepped forward to fill the silver cup, bowed, and retreated. Lu Yurong raised her cup again. "This cup I would like to toast, Sir, to eliminate evil and punish evil. It is very satisfying." She covered her face with her sleeve and drained the cup in one gulp. Shi Wu stepped forward to fill the cup, bowed, and retreated. Lu Yurong raised her silver cup again. "This cup I would like to toast, Sir, on behalf of the innocent people who died." She drained the cup in one gulp again. After drinking 3 cups of wine on an empty stomach, her beautiful face blushed, delicate and beautiful. Chu Li had been sitting quietly all along. After watching her drink 3 cups, he raised his cup and drained it in one gulp. Shi Wu stepped forward to fill the 2 silver cups, bowed, and retreated behind Lu Yurong. He closed the curtains and remained motionless, like a statue. Lu Yurong looked at him quietly. "I know, Sir does not want to enter the House of Duke." Her eyes were moving. Her temperament was dignified and calm, luxurious and graceful. It was a perfect match with her original beauty, forming an endless temptation. "Yes." Chu Li drank a cup of wine, slowly put down the silver cup and looked at her calmly. "People from the mountains prefer to live a leisurely life. I am really not used to working in the House of Duke. I can only thank Lady Lu for her kindness." "Sigh, such a pity." Lu Yurong shook her head and sighed, waved her hand, indicating for Shi Wu to step down, and personally filled the silver cup for him. "The House of Duke is understaffed. It is a pity that many people in the martial arts world are afraid of being cursed, so they are stingy and do not enter the House of Duke, causing bandits to flourish in the area under their jurisdiction. Even if they want to kill the bandits, they are powerless." Chu Li was silent. This was a fact. The 12 houses of Duke all had this difficulty, so they cultivated their own masters. But how could the masters of one house be compared to the masters of the martial arts world? Lu Yurong said lightly, "A hero like Sir is rare in the martial arts world. I am very impressed." "Lady Lu, you flatter me." Chu Li shook his head. Lu Yurong said, "Since young, you have suffered countless hardships, suffered countless crimes, and finally mastered the ultimate martial arts, so you completely let yourself go, do whatever you want, prey on the common people, bully the weak. You do not know how many people in the martial arts world like this. It is really disappointing." Chu Li said, "The martial arts world has always been like this. That is why it is rare to have someone like Sir." Lu Yurong said, "What is righteous? There is no fear. Sir also knows that there will be countless storms waiting for you in the future, but you can still be like this. It is really rare." Chu Li smiled lightly. Chapter 268. P.S. The last chapter is late. This one is a little earlier. It can be offset, right? Chu Li raised his eyebrows and looked at Lu Yurong. Lu Yurong looked at him naturally. Thank you for your kindness, Lady Lu. Chu Li said, I will remember it. Lu Yurong smiled. All right, I will not force you. I am curious. How did you train your knife technique? It is amazing. Chu Li's cultivation level was much weaker than his own. Usually, he would disperse his inner energy and store it in the void. Once he needed to use it, he would use the life and death scripture to retrieve it, with the void as his body. Outsiders would not be able to tell. The power of the 7 forms of godly knife was amazing, especially after mastering the last 6 forms. The power of the first form was doubled. The blade of eternity gathered all the inner energy in the body into one blade, while the 7 forms of divine blade gathered all the inner energy in one blade and multiplied its power. It was as if the blade of eternity was combined with the infinite Azure Sea technique, stacking the inner energy and multiplying the power. It was not an exaggeration to call the 7 forms of godly knife a godly knife. Chu Li smiled. When the knife technique is trained to the extreme, it will surpass the limit of inner energy. Lu Yurong's eyes focused. How can the knife technique be trained to the extreme? Chu Li smiled without saying a word. Sitting closer, he could see that Lu Yurong was not an ordinary person. At first glance, she did not seem to know martial arts, just like himself. If it was not for the omniscient mirror, he would have been fooled. The omniscient mirror could see through everything. Her inner energy was hazy and vague, like smoke or fog. It was very strange. The purer a martial artist's inner energy was, the more solid it was, like mercury or water. Her misty inner energy did not seem to be a threat. But he had seen Prince Anne's injuries and knew how powerful Lu Yurong's inner energy was. Lu Yurong said, I have a suggestion. Please consider it. Chu Li gestured for her to speak. Lu Yurong said, How about I cooperate with you? How? The public house will provide information. Lu Yurong said, It is up to you to kill or not. If you need any help, you can look for the public house. Lu Yurong continued, The High Duke's public house will assist in investigating the whereabouts of whichever thief you wish to kill. In this way, Mr. Lu and I are only friends, and it will not involve the High Duke's public house. Chu Li remained silent. Lu Yurong poured him another glass of wine. Sir, you can consider it. It's just a small suggestion. Chu Li said, Lady Lu, there's something I don't understand. Go ahead. Lu Yurong nodded lightly, her bright eyes looking at him quietly. What's wrong with Second Master? Chu Li asked, Why would he kidnap a girl? Logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case. Lu Yurong smiled and sighed, It's just a self-deprecating act. Chu Li replied with an, Oh, and pretended to listen attentively. Lu Yurong said, His Majesty is very suspicious, especially towards our public house. He is even more guarded against it. We have no choice but to come up with this plan to resolve His Majesty's suspicions. If that's the case, Chu Li frowned. Lu Yurong sighed. Our public house has won the hearts of the people. We've managed Green Mountain Road like an iron bucket. Even water can't get in. How can His Majesty feel at ease? Chu Li nodded slowly. Lu Yurong said, Instead of His Majesty making a move, why not let Second Brother tarnish the public house's reputation? It's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone? It's difficult to find maids in the public house. Lu Yurong sighed softly and showed a weak smile. Countless people want to put their hands on the public house. Some of them have ulterior motives. Some of them have their own interests. Chu Li nodded slowly and took a sip from the silver cup. Lu Yurong said, How can we use maids like this? Instead of being on guard, why not find maids ourselves? Interesting. Chu smiled. Lu Yurong smiled. I'll choose in secret and investigate thoroughly. If they're clean and have good qualifications, I won't let second brother use the excuse of kidnapping a girl to bring them into the public house. Chu sighed. Lady Lu, you're really meticulous. You're even better than a man. I'm a girl after all. Lu Yurong sighed and shook her head. Women are naturally weak. If they want to succeed, they can only rely on men. Without someone like you to help, it's hard to achieve anything. Chu put down the silver cup. Forget it. Since Lady Lu is so honest, then let's work together. From now on, Sir and I are friends. Lu Yurong smiled sweetly. Her eyes were as bright as a pearl. For our friendship, let's toast to Sir. She covered her face with her sleeve and drank it all in one gulp. Shiwu stepped forward and filled Chu Li's cup. He whispered, Lady, you can't drink anymore. Chu Li smiled and picked up the silver cup. He drank it all in one gulp. Lu Yurong waved her hand. It's okay. Today, I've met a person like Sir. It's okay to drink a few more cups. Your body... Shiwu hesitated. Lu Yurong frowned and stared at him. Her jade-like face was crimson red, making her even more charming and seductive, causing ripples in one's heart. Shiwu helplessly bowed and retreated. Come, let me toast to Sir again. Lu Yurong picked up the silver cup. She covered her face with her sleeve and drank it all in one gulp. Chu Li also drank it all in one gulp. Lu Yurong's eyes were blurred. When she looked around, she was amorous. She sighed softly. Sir, you're a hero. Among all the people I've met, only one can be compared to you. Chu Li smiled. Who? I wonder if Sir knows about the public house. Of course. There's a rank 2 scribe in the public house. His name is Chu Li. Lu Yurong sighed. Her eyes were blurred. He's really a dragon among men. He's young but has extraordinary wisdom. Chu Li? Chu Li smiled. It was a strange feeling for him to say his own name. Lu Yurong nodded gently. In terms of martial arts, I'm afraid Chu Li won't lose to Sir. In terms of wisdom, he's even more amazing. To be honest, I admire him very much. Chu Li said, It's a pity that I can't meet him. Chu Li is a scribe in the public house. He doesn't leave the public house often. Lu Yurong sighed. It's not easy to meet him. Chu Li said, There are thousands of heroes in the world. I can't know all of them. Lu Yurong stretched out her right hand and waved it. It's different. It's different. This Chu Li is different. In terms of the world's young heroes, there are only the 2 of you. The rest are all ordinary people. I don't deserve that. Chu Li smiled. I'm just a martial artist. How can I be considered a hero? Sigh, if only I could invite this Chu Li to the public house. That would be great. Lu Yurong shook her head and sighed. It's a pity that he's loyal. He can only be my enemy, but not my friend. Since he's the lady's enemy, should I kill him? Chu Li asked. Lu Yurong quickly waved her hand and sighed. It's a pity to kill such a person. The lady's temperament is extraordinary. She's even better than a man. Chu Li slowly nodded. Chu Li held the silver cup. His emotions were complicated. Looking at Lu Yurong, whose eyes were blurred and her head lowered, he sighed to himself. Yes, it would be a pity to kill such a person. Shiwu said, Sir, do. The lady is drunk. I'll help her back to the public house. Chu Li nodded. Thank you. Lu Yurong raised her head and smiled. She closed fist saluted. I'm sorry to make you laugh. I'm really drunk. I'll drink with you another day. Chapter 269. The next morning, Lu Yurong came to the Hall of Benevolence. Only Lu Yushu was sitting at the table. Lu Yurong sat opposite Lu Yushu. The Hall of Benevolence was where the whole family gathered to eat together. A red sandalwood round table was placed in the middle of the room. Lu Yushu sat by the table, his head lowered in contemplation. The room was empty. Lu Yurong was dressed in a moon-white gown, looking refreshing and pleasant. "Where's Big Brother?" "I'm too excited from my cultivation. I'm not eating anymore," Lu Yushu said in a muffled voice. He leaned back on the armchair and said lazily, "I heard you were drunk yesterday. You've taken an extra 100 taels of silver this month." Lu Yurong said lightly, "You'll make it up next month." "I say, lass, don't interrupt." Lu Yushu slammed the table and shouted, "As a young master, can't I take a little more silver to use?" "I can't," Lu Yurong said lightly. Lu Yushu scoffed and deflated. "Is there a need for that? He's just a white shroud Shindao. I hate men who wear white the most." Lu Yurong raised her voice. "Elder Shi, let them serve the dishes." "Yes," Shiwu's voice came from outside. Lu Yushu said, "If it's up to me, we should just kill him right away. It'll be considered a show of strength. This guy is crazy." "Establishing dominance," Lu Yurong said lightly, "to kill Du Feng. How many masters do you think we'll need? You've also seen his saber skills. Can Elder Shi and the others win one-on-one? If one isn't enough, then 2, 3. Lu Yushu scoffed. "I don't believe that we can't take care of him. If he doesn't give face to the House of High Dukes, then we'll take care of him and intimidate the rascals." "You only know how to kill, kill, kill." Lu Yurong shook her head and said disappointedly, "What can you achieve with just killing? That Du fellow isn't the same. He only knows how to kill, kill, kill." Lu Yushu was unconvinced. "He's killing the wicked and enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens." Lu Yurong said angrily, "What about you? You kill anyone you don't like just because they're wearing white. Isn't that right? Anyway, none of the men in white are good people." Lu Yushu pursed his lips. "Killing them is the right thing to do. Don't tell me you've fallen for this white shroud Shindao. What do you think?" Lu Yurong said. Lu Yushu sighed. "That's true. You like women." "Who said I like women?" Lu Yurong rolled her eyes at him. "Don't spout nonsense." Lu Yushu said, "I see that you prefer to be with women. I don't like women, and I don't like men either. Love affairs are too boring and will only delay the proper business. Lu Yushu shook his head. "You're too ambitious." "Second brother, if you're useful, I won't have to work hard." Lu Yurong scoffed. Lu Yushu said, "If you don't like him, then why do you treat him so well? There's no need." Lu Yurong sighed. His tone was gentle as he said earnestly, "Our House of High Dukes is powerful. If we want people to be loyal to us, we must use kindness and sincerity to move people." Lu Yushu pursed his lips. "Make friends. One more friend means one more path. You're good. You're cutting yourself off from others." "Forget it. There's no point in telling you all this. Next month, 100 taels will be deducted. If you provoke, Mr. Du, don't even think about leaving the residence next month." "Who's the older brother, and who's the younger sister?" Lu Yushu yelled angrily. A few maids came in and laid out 10 dishes and 2 bowls of soup. Lu Yurong ignored him, took the silver chopsticks, and started to eat. Her movements were elegant. Lu Yushu quickly shut up. He had to maintain his reputation in front of the maids. A man's reputation was important. This younger sister was too smart. He originally wanted to teach Du a lesson or even kill him, but he was seen through, so he could only give up. Shiwu suddenly came in and handed over a letter. "My lady, Mr. Du sent someone to deliver this." Lu Yurong was stunned. Shiwu opened it and shook it. He passed it to Lu Yurong after confirming that there was nothing strange. Lu Yurong glanced at it and quickly put down the silver chopsticks. Mr. Du is leaving. I have to send him off. Old Shi, prepare the horse. Yes, Shiwu responded and hurried out. Du is leaving? Lu Yushu laughed. He's quite sensible. Lu Yurong glared at him and turned to leave. Shiwu had already prepared 2 handsome red horses outside the residence and a moon-white cloak in his hand. As soon as Lu Yurong came out, Shiwu handed her the cloak and mounted the horse. Go! The 2 horses rushed to the main street. Lu Yurong wore a white veil. She followed closely behind Shiwu and galloped on the horse. Her cloak fluttered, and she looked valiant. Shiwu stretched out his palm from time to time, and the pedestrians in front who could not avoid in time were smoothly pushed out. They went out of the town, unimpeded. Chu Li asked someone to send a letter to the House of High Dukes and left the inn. He walked out of the town. He felt that there was no benefit in staying here. It was better to leave early to avoid endless trouble in the future. As an enemy, if he could not concentrate on dealing with the other party, he would be asking for trouble. He investigated the situation of the Hawaii Public House last night, and it was shocking. There were 14 grandmasters in the Ren Public House. Lu Yurong was too good at forbearance. She had one trump card after another. He saw many people from the martial arts world in the inn, eyeing him covetously. They had prepared a way to poison him. If the poison failed, they would kill him and force him to make a move. If he made a move, the House of High Dukes would have to make a move. They would rather sacrifice themselves to force the House of High Dukes to deal with him. Chu Li had killed too many people. These people would inevitably have brothers and sisters or master and apprentices. Even if they could not kill him, they would use the House of High Dukes to make him shed a layer of skin. Chu Li thought about it and felt that his hands and feet were tied in Green Mountain Town. It was better to leave. As he walked, he pondered and looked around. There were people following him, and they did not come with good intentions. His pace was calm, and he did not use his light body technique. He unknowingly walked 2 miles. Mr. Du. The sound of horses' hooves came from afar, and Lu Yurong's mellow and moving voice followed. Chu Li turned his head and saw 2 horses carrying Lu Yurong, and Shiwu galloping over. The white cloak fluttered in the wind. The horses were like dragons, and the people were like jade. When they came near, Lu Yurong leaped off the horse and stared at him. Mister, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Chu Li pointed around and sighed. It's better to leave. Lu Yurong's bright eyes swept over, and she scoffed. What's there to be afraid of? Elder Shi. Yes, she was said in a low voice. He went into the woods, and there were screams and curses coming from inside. Lu Yurong ignored them and pointed to the pagoda beside the woods. Let's go in and talk. The 2 came to the pagoda. Shiwu floated out of the woods and came to the pagoda. He wiped the stone table and stone block. Lu Yurong sat down gracefully and sighed. It's only a short while, and we have to part ways. Mr. Du should stay for a few days. I'll come again next time and stay for a few more days. Chu Li smiled. Where are you going? Lu Yurong said, settle down and don't forget to write me a letter. Okay, Chu Li nodded. Suddenly, another horse galloped over. The rider was an old man in a crane cloak, a grandmaster. He carried a wooden box in his hand and came to the pagoda. He opened the wooden box and took out the wine and dishes inside. Shiwu poured wine for the 2. I've prepared a little wine for you to leave. Lu Yurong lifted the silver cup, raised her sleeve to cover her face, and drank it in one gulp. Chu Li also drank it in one gulp. The 2 ate a few mouthfuls of food and drank a glass of wine. Chapter 270. P.S. revive with full health, and continue to update 6 times. Let the monthly votes fly. Lu Yurong furrowed her brows. The gazebo was surrounded by hundreds of martial artists with swords and knives. They were densely packed together, glaring at Chu Li fiercely. There were also some who stared at her lustfully. Her expression did not change. After glancing at them, she continued to look at Chu Li. Chu Li's expression was calm. He smiled at Lu Yurong as he raised his silver cup and took a sip. Lu Yurong sighed. "Mr. Du, it's a pity that we can't talk in peace." Chu Li shook his head. "It doesn't matter. Since things have come to this, let's bid farewell for now. I'll take my leave first. See you again." He put down the silver cup, wrapped his fist in his palm, and leaped onto the railing. Then he leaped past the martial arts masters and leaped onto a tree. He stepped on the treetop and drifted away. "Chase!" The group of burly men hurriedly shouted and chased after him like a swarm of bees. "Miss, why didn't Mr. Du kill them directly? Why did he flee in such a pathetic manner?" Shiwu looked at the group of people who were chasing after them and asked in confusion. Lu Yurong shook her head and smiled. "Does he not want to kill in front of Miss?" Shiwu laughed. "He's too lazy to kill them." Lu Yurong rolled her eyes at him. "It's not worth it. These people are just seeking revenge and personal grudges. They're not evil people, so it's not good to kill them." "Then he will be in trouble." Shiwu shook his head. "If he doesn't kill them to establish his authority, there will be more people who want revenge. I don't think he cares," Lu Yurong said. "That's why he can't stay in the city anymore. Otherwise, the city will be in chaos. He has a lot of painstaking effort." Shiwu suddenly understood and smiled. "It seems that he really has feelings for you." "Elder Shi, don't talk nonsense." Lu Yurong smiled and said, "If he really wanted to, he wouldn't have left so cleanly. Du Xia from Snow Lunar Pavilion must be extraordinarily beautiful. I really want to meet her." Shiwu said, "No matter how beautiful Du Xia is, how can she be compared to Lady? Xiao sure is prettier than me." Lu Yurong shook her head. Shiwu said, "I don't think Xiao sure can be compared to Lady Xiao." Lu Yurong rolled her eyes at him and said, "Elder Shi, you're trying to bewitch me." Shiwu chuckled. "Let's go." Lu Yurong stood up gracefully and glanced at the direction where Chu Li disappeared. There are things that he should do and things that he shouldn't. This Du Feng really is a man of character. Shiwu smiled, but secretly shook his head. Du Feng was looking for trouble, indecisive and soft-hearted. He did not see any manly demeanor in Du Feng. Chu Li glided away at lightning speed. The burly men lowered their heads and chased after him with all their might. They didn't have the time to scold him and just kept their mouths shut. After chasing fiercely for a while, they had unknowingly run over 100 miles in a single breath, and all of them were panting from exhaustion. Chu Li laughed out loud and suddenly sped up, disappearing in the blink of an eye. "Damn it, are you kidding us? Truly, truly hateful. Surname Du, don't run if you have the guts. We'll definitely catch you, you spineless man. Let's attack the Snow Lunar Pavilion." As soon as these words came out, everyone fell silent and turned to look at the person who spoke. This was a sturdy young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He was panting heavily from running, his face flushed red. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he was stunned, not knowing what he had said wrong. "Sigh, young man, it's impossible to attack the Snow Lunar Pavilion." "Why?" The sturdy young man was unconvinced. "He must have gone to the Snow Lunar Pavilion. There's still his wife there. We can just kill them all." "Sigh, what a rash young man." "Young man, you can't offend the Snow Lunar Pavilion." A middle-aged man with a bare chest shook his head. "We're not even enough to fill the gaps between the teeth of the Snow Lunar Pavilion. They don't have many people, do they? Not many people, and they're still a first-rate faction. Think about it. Are we just going to let it go like this? The sturdy young man was unconvinced. Are we just going to give up on this blood feud? He'll have to come out eventually. Once we hear news of him, we'll rush over. The middle-aged man chuckled. He can't be a coward for the rest of his life, right? That's right. Everyone nodded. The sturdy young man looked at the crowd and fell silent. He immediately understood. This motley crew said that they were here for revenge, but they were actually afraid. They knew that Dufong would not attack, which was why they were so daring and imposing. If Dufong were to really attack, they would probably run faster than dogs. Chu Li did not go too far. He found a forest and stopped. He buried his long blade under a towering tree. He sat cross-legged on a thick, soft, withered leaf, and his mind went to the giant in the void of his mind. This giant was the heavenly demon and also himself. All humans had demonic characteristics and could turn into the heavenly demon. This heavenly demon's face was his current appearance. With a thought, the heavenly demon's face turned into another person, handsome and intimidating. The heavenly demon's aura that had been coiled around his heart quickly circulated around his body. After the heavenly demon's aura circulated once, his body slowly grew taller. He was slender and thin, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. His facial features were handsome, and his face was like jade. Under the white robe, he really looked like an elegant young master. His heavenly demonic power was still shallow, and he did not usually cultivate much. He could only transform into two people, which was still far from being able to transform. If he wanted to transform more, the heavenly demon's aura in his heart would need to be even thicker. Now that the second transformation had almost depleted his heavenly demon's aura, he needed to cultivate more. Although he had the heavenly demon's inheritance, he did not know the details. He only dared to cultivate it after investigating, and had been restraining himself. However, he faintly felt that if he wanted to break through to the enlightened mastery's boundary, he would have to rely on the heavenly demonic power. However, he still needed to understand the origins of the heavenly demonic power. From the name, it was probably not that simple. If he were to cultivate it rashly, it would be bad if he left behind any future problems. Among the books he had read, he had only seen one that mentioned the heavenly demonic power. However, it was only mentioned once and not written much. Such a miraculous power was only mentioned once, as if there was fear in his heart. There was a strange feeling about it, which made him even more careful. The name Heavenly Demon was a little scary. If he did not feel that it was mysterious and unpredictable, he would not dare to cultivate it. If he could go to the imperial residence of King and read all the books in the imperial residence, he might be able to find out the origins and roots of the heavenly demon. He disappeared from the forest in a flash, and after a few flashes, he returned to the gate of the city. His white robe fluttered, and he paced with his hands behind his back. He looked around as if he was playing, and at one glance, it was obvious that he was a young master who came out to study. The two city guards glanced at him and ignored him. After Chu Li entered the city, he bought a white jade folding fan. As he waved the folding fan, he looked more like a rich scholar. He waved the folding fan and entered the Merciful Heart brothel. He found a seat on the second floor and drank while listening to the discussions around him. Sigh, what a pity, what a pity! Haha, it's a pity. It's rare for the third lady to leave the imperial residence. And you didn't see her. But don't be too happy. The third lady was wearing a veil, and you didn't see her. That's different. Someone hurriedly refuted and laughed. The third lady's beauty doesn't need to be judged by her face. That figure, that bearing, I get dizzy just by looking at it. It's a blessing of 3 lifetimes. If you only look at her figure, isn't that Dufong getting dizzy? This white shroud Shindao is really amazing. He actually withstood the third lady's recruitment. Someone slammed the table and praised. If it were me, I wouldn't have been able to take it. Isn't joining the House of High Duke a great thing? If you were Dufong, I would be the High Duke. Sigh, the third lady's style, her breadth of mind. It really makes me feel ashamed. Chu shook his head and laughed. It seemed that Lu Yurong was also mysterious in their eyes. He left and returned to see this Lu Yurong clearly to find out what secrets she had and what heart technique she cultivated. Chapter 271. Under the night sky, Chu changed into a black outfit and glided into the Run public house. The Run public house was heavily guarded, much more so than the E public house. The E public house had the geographical advantage. The isolated islands were extremely easy to defend, so they did not need to have sentries every 5 steps and a sentry every 10 steps. Chu relied on the omniscient mirror to find out what was going on. Coupled with the scripture of life and death, his body was like a withered tree, merging with the world. He arrived at Lu Yurong's courtyard with ease. The courtyard was filled with blooming flowers, and a delicate fragrance floated in the air, refreshing the mind. He was very familiar with flowers and plants, so he could tell that this was a group of strange flowers. They didn't bloom during the day, and only bloomed at night under the moonlight. Lu Yurong sat in the pavilion in the courtyard, reading. 8 palace lanterns hung in the pavilion, illuminating the place brightly. Lu Yurong was dressed in a pale blue gown. Beside her sat 2 beautiful maids in embroidered robes. From time to time, the 2 maids would stretch out their slender hands, pick up a piece of fruit and put it into her mouth, or pick up a piece of dessert, after which they would feed her a mouthful of water. Lu Yurong held the scroll in her hand and seemed to be deep in thought. She was either deep in thought or she continued to flip through the pages. When the melon or the fruit arrived, she would open her mouth. Her eyes never left the scroll and her mind never wandered. Chu laughed to himself. No wonder Lu Yushu said that she liked women. With the way she was behaving, no one would believe her if she said she did not like women. Lu Yurong suddenly put down her book and looked up at the bright moon in the sky. Miss, is it time? Let's go. Lu Yurong nodded, put down the book, stood up and walked out. The 3 women gracefully followed. Another 6 beautiful maids walked out of the courtyard and came to a palace on the side. The palace was spacious, and a statue of a fairy was placed in the center of the hall. Her facial features were vivid and lifelike, just like Lu Yurong. Her expression was cold and calm, as if she was looking down on all living things. She wore a pleated dress, and every fold was clearly visible. Under the statue was a table with an incense burner on it. There was a golden futon in front of the table. Around the statue, 9 red circles were drawn on the walls of the main hall, and within the circles there were moon-white prayer mats. The distance between the 9 praying mats and the golden praying mats varied. Chu glanced at it and vaguely felt that it was arranged according to the positions of the stars in the sky. After Lu Yurong entered the hall, she first lit a stick of incense in front of the statue, then slowly sat down on the golden cattail hassock. She closed her eyes and remained motionless. The other 9 women sat on their respective praying mats, calming their breathing and condensing their qi. Chu stood under the wall of Lu Yurong's courtyard, hiding in the shadows under the wall. Chu remained motionless and looked at the reflection with the omniscient mirror. A fairy appeared in Lu Yurong's mind. She looked exactly the same as the statue outside. The only difference was that her eyes were closed. As time passed, The women's breathing began to synchronize, as if they were one person. The fairy in Lu Yurong's mind suddenly cast a spell and opened her eyes. Suddenly, 10 strange forces fell from the sky. It was injected into their bodies. This power entered his body and circulated in his meridians, following a special mental cultivation method. Chu Li realized that Lu Yurong's heart technique was different from the other 9 girls. She guided the 10 energies to circulate as if she was pushing them to cultivate. This power was very similar to the erratic power in Lu Yurong's body. The omniscient mirror warned him that this was an extremely terrifying power, and he must not touch it. The fairy in Lu Yurong's mind changed her hands and closed her eyes. The 10 powers suddenly merged into one. A ray of light flashed across Lu Yurong's body. The other 9 powers gathered in her body. Chu Li squinted his eyes. At this time, Lu Yurong exuded a terrifying aura like a prehistoric beast. She could swallow him in one gulp. The fairy in her mind changed her technique again. Lu Yurong's power surged, and once again poured into the 9 women. Chu Li vaguely understood that this was a formation. The 9 women gathered their powers in her body, and she returned them the power. It seemed like there was no increase or decrease. However, Lu Yurong's improvement was extremely fast. It was like a river converging into a lake, and the lake overflowing into the river. It seemed like the lake's water did not increase or decrease, but it was still a lake, if they cultivated alone. Without Lu Yurong's help, their cultivation would not be this fast. Lu Yurong could not be this fast without their help. They improved each other. It was really amazing. These 9 maids should not be underestimated. They were young and already at the innate mastery's boundary. What was more terrifying was their strange inner energy. If an ordinary innate master were to encounter them, they would not be able to survive. Chu Li stood under the wall and thought. Lu Yurong's heart technique could directly break through to the Grandmaster's boundary because no one heard of her disappearing. But she quietly broke through to the Grandmaster's boundary. It was very likely because of the heart technique. She had been hiding her Grandmaster's boundary, not to hide her trump card, but because she had her own difficulties. It could also be because of this heart technique. With such a heart technique, who would not be tempted? As time passed, the power falling from the sky became stronger. Lu Yurong and the 9 women gradually could not bear the burden, and were on the verge of collapsing. Withdraw! Lu Yurong shouted. The fairy in her mind released the technique and closed her eyes again. The 9 women's breathing began to change, messing up their own breathing rhythm. After a moment, the power in the sky gradually weakened until it disappeared. They let out a long breath and slowly opened their eyes. Lu Yurong's spirit became more obscure. Her whole body was wrapped in a thick fog. It was hard to see her clearly. This thick fog came from the void and blended in with the surroundings. That was why she gave the impression that she did not know martial arts. The incense in front of the statue had just finished burning. She got up and climbed another one. She turned her head and said, "Do not get close to men on normal days." "Yes, my lady," the 9 women said in unison. Lu Yurong sighed. "We will give up the idea of having a man for the rest of our lives. Once you lose your virginity with the beauty power, unless the other party is an enlightened master, you will not be able to escape. You will only harm the other party. My lady, we will not marry. We will serve you for the rest of our lives." The 9 women smiled. Lu Yurong shook her head. "I'm just afraid that you will blame me. We have cultivated this ability to stay young forever. We can't wait to thank you, my lady. What's the use of staying young forever if you can't touch men? There's nothing good about those stinky men. My lady's Empyrean fairy power is even more ruthless. Even if we lose our virginity, our martial arts will still be there. Once my lady loses her virginity, her martial arts will be crippled. Lu Yurong shook her head and smiled. You are right. There's nothing good about those stinky men. I won't care about them. Let's go back to sleep. She waved her hand and left the basilica. Chu Li glided to Lu Yushu's courtyard. He was hugging a beautiful woman and fooling around. He glanced around and went to Lu Yushu's courtyard. Lu Yushu was extraordinarily handsome. He was cultivating in the courtyard. His fists were like hammers, and they were as fast as lightning. Chu Li shook his head. Lu Yushu was still in the innate mastery's boundary. He was still a step away from perfecting the innate mastery. It seemed that his aptitude was not outstanding. Suddenly, he stopped in front of a small courtyard. This small courtyard belonged to High Duke Lu of the Rin Public House. From afar, it looked like a giant beast was sleeping in the courtyard. He only used the omniscient mirror to observe, and he could feel the majestic aura. It was as if he could be killed with one punch. This High Duke Lu's cultivation level was deep. It was something he had never seen before in his life. It was really scary. It was far beyond High Duke Song of the Hawaii Public House. The omniscient mirror kept warning him, telling him to stay away from the small courtyard. He looked at the small courtyard for a while. His heart was itching. He was extremely curious. He wanted to see how High Duke Lu was doing. Even among grandmasters, there were strong and weak ones. It was like the difference between the clouds and the mud. It was like the difference between acquired masters. He wanted to see where he stood and how he compared to High Duke Lu. His body flew over the wall and slowly landed in the small courtyard. This courtyard was more like the residence of the scribes of the High Duke's public house. Lu Yurong's courtyard was 4 times bigger than this. He activated the scripture of life and death and blended in with his surroundings. His body was like a dead tree. High Duke Lu was a handsome middle-aged man. He had a jade-like face and a clean beard. He had an elegant and refined aura like a celestial being. He was lying on the bed. Suddenly, he opened his eyes as if he felt something. Beside him was a woman who was sleeping. She was as beautiful as a flower. He could not tell her age, but she looked similar to Lu Yurong. She was resting on High Duke Lu's shoulder. Her breathing was light, and she was motionless. Chapter 272. His footsteps were silent as he slowly walked to the center of the courtyard. The moonlight was like water. His figure was tall and slender, and his temperament was elegant. He really had an otherworldly aura. He looked left and right with a burning gaze, and his gaze finally focused on Chu Li, who was at the foot of the wall. Chu Li stepped out of the shadows and stood in front of him quietly. High Duke Lu sized him up without a word. At such a young age, he had already reached the Grandmaster's boundary. He was truly a genius and was not inferior to his own daughter. It was not surprising for such a person to be able to reach this place without anyone noticing. Unfortunately, he was an enemy and not a friend. Chu Li slowly pointed his finger forward. High Duke Lu slid to the side to avoid it. He threw out a light punch, as if he was greeting an old friend. Chu Li activated the omniscient mirror and clearly saw every change in his body. The flow of his inner energy, his flesh and bones, his skin, and even his pores, everything was clearly imprinted in his mind. A gust of inner force condensed into a ball of fist force. Like a rock rolling down from the top of a mountain, it sped up after leaving the fist. It became faster and faster, becoming unstoppable. Bang! A thunderous sound exploded. A purplish golden light flashed across Chu Li's body before the light dissipated. It was as if he had been hit by a galloping horse. His body flew over the wall and disappeared into the night, as if he had been punched into the void. High Duke Lu remained motionless as he stared at the direction where Chu Li disappeared. He furrowed his brows in silence. The Great Lane Temple was really troublesome. Shiwu flipped over the wall and floated over. High Duke. High Duke Lu waved his hand and said, "Don't chase after him. Let him be." This brat took a palm strike from me, but he was able to escape with his life. He's quite capable. Why is the Tempest Temple here? Shiwu frowned and said, "We have never interfered with them and have never had any grudges with them. This bunch of monks has a strange way of thinking. Normal people are hard to understand. Ignore him." High Duke Lu said plainly, "Thank you for your hard work. This is my duty." Shiwu shook his head. He made a fist salute and left, returning to Lu Yurong's courtyard. Lu Yurong stood in the courtyard wearing only a plain and elegant moon-white gown. "Elder Shi, what's going on?" "The High Duke fought with someone," Shiwu said, "and they ran away." "Fight with father?" Lu Yurong frowned. "Assassinate him?" The 9 maids also came out, their beautiful hair draped over their shoulders, all of them charming. Shiwu said, "Who can assassinate the High Duke?" "How many moves did he use?" "The High Duke defeated him with 1 punch. He should be a monk from the Tempest Temple." "This bunch of monks." Lu Yurong sighed. "Troublesome." The Great Lane Temple was indeed powerful. She knew it very well. The Tempest Temple was not as easy to deal with as outsiders thought. Although it was only a martial arts sect, it had an extremely deep foundation. No one knew how many hidden masters they had. Otherwise, the emperor wouldn't be so afraid. The Tempest Temple had killed many of the imperial house's protectors. Based on the emperor's temper, he would have killed his way to the Tempest Temple and annihilated the group of monks. But in the end, the Great Lane Temple was still fine. The emperor did not make a move. This was definitely not in line with the emperor's usual temperament. It could only be said that the Great Lane Temple was unfathomable, causing the emperor to not dare to make a move. Chu Li's internal organs were on fire. It was as if there was a fire burning inside him. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels were heavily injured. This punch directly broke through the sentient menace and injured his internal organs at the same time. It was even more overbearing than the spear finger strike. If it were not for his strong body, the fact that he had cultivated the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait, the sentient menace, and the life and death scripture, he would have died from just 1 punch. Such an overbearing fist technique. He had never heard of it before. The depth of High Duke Lu's cultivation level made him gasp in amazement. It seemed that he still had a long way to go. He had to bury his head and train hard. This time, when he returned to the imperial residence, he would not care about the mundane affairs and focus on training. He did not know if High Duke Lu's cultivation level was perfected, but it was definitely not the enlightened mastery's boundary. If he wanted to become an enlightened master, he would have to reach this stage first. He left the Green Mountain town. As he hurried, he dispelled High Duke Lu's fist force. When the infinite azure sea met this fist force, it was like water hitting a rock. The effect was minimal and could not be dispelled. He channeled King and Scripture of Duality. The Scripture of Duality turned once. His inner energy was unusually pure. When it met High Duke Lu's inner energy, it was like water meeting ice. It slowly wore away. There was a glimmer of hope. Spiritual energy surged in from all directions. A portion of it nourished his body. A portion of it channeled the Scripture of Duality to wear away High Duke Lu's inner energy. After a night of wearing away, the fist force was reduced very little. If this continued, he might not be able to do it even after a month. The fist force seemed to have a mind of its own as it continuously destroyed his body. Even if his body was strong and was nourished by spiritual energy, it was still deteriorating bit by bit. He concentrated and thought. The scene of High Duke Lu's fist force appeared in his mind. He stopped in a dense forest and pondered over High Duke Lu's fist technique. He tried to move his inner energy along his meridians. Then he punched out. He shook his head. It was still lacking a little. Although he knew the route of channeling and the body's movements, it was not easy to perfectly coordinate the two. The sun rose from the east. It slowly glided across the sky and hung on the west mountain. The sunset filled the sky. Chu Li regained his senses. His stomach growled. His body weakened a little more. However, he looked excited. After a day of endless pondering and practice, he found the knack and could perform this fist technique. His inner energy circulated from his toes to his thighs to his waist, and finally to his shoulders, elbows, and wrists. Every muscle was completely relaxed. His inner energy gushed out, and he punched out soundlessly. Bam! An old pine tree's bark flew off. It shook violently, and pine needles fell to the ground. Chu Li walked to the pine tree and looked at the fist mark. His smile widened. This fist was now his. It was powerful and could be considered an antique study. High Duke Lu's fist technique condensed his inner energy into a ball and turned it into a fist force. It was so pure that it was hard to eliminate it. Chu Li learned this fist technique. His inner energy condensed into a ball of fist force. However, it was not as pure as High Duke Lu's. It was like a piece of wood against a rock. He could only knock it away but not break it. He channeled his inner energy and punched his abdomen with his right fist. Bam! It was like a thunderclap. Uffed! He spat out a mouthful of black blood. His face was pale, but he smiled. It was effective. This punch forced half of High Duke Lu's fist force out of his body. If his inner energy was pure, he would not have to use such a method of self-injury. He could have directly destroyed the fist force and turned it into inner energy. He punched the right side of his chest again. Bam! Uffed! He spat out a mouthful of blood. His smile became lighter. After 2 punches, although he was injured, High Duke Lu's fist force was only left with a trace. This trace was nothing to worry about. It could be worn away in a day. Chu Li breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had the scripture of duality. Otherwise, with the purity of his inner energy condensed into a fist force, he would not be able to do anything to High Duke Lu's fist force. He left the dense forest. The spiritual force from heaven and earth entered his body and continuously healed his body. By the time the lanterns were lit, he had already entered a small town. He ordered some wine and food and wolfed down the food. He regained his vigor and his body looked brand new. This time, it was a blessing in disguise. He learned this fist technique and gained a lot. Chapter 273. In the evening, Chu Li returned to the public house. On the way back, he had been studying the 7 forms of godly knife. He wanted to change it into a swordsmanship. The 7 forms of godly knife was powerful. It was a waste to only use it when he was Du Feng. The swordsmanship he learned was powerful, but none could beat the 7 forms of godly knife. After more than 10 days of intensive study, he saw some results. Unfortunately, it was too rushed. The power was still less than the 7 forms of godly knife. He needed to study it again in the future. Seeing the mighty gate of the public house and the 2 fierce stone lions, he felt a sense of familiarity. It was as if he had returned home. After entering the public house, he took a boat straight to the Glories Will courtyard. The Glories Will courtyard was rosy. Shui was wearing a white outfit and was cultivating. When she heard the sound, she turned and saw Chu Li. She was overjoyed. Master! Chu Li smiled and looked at her. She was more beautiful and her cultivation level was higher. It seemed that she did not slack off in her cultivation. Shui greeted him and held his arm. Her fragrance lingered in his nose. Why are you back so late? Chu Li smiled and sat down in the hall. Shui quickly served tea with both hands. She stared at him with her big bright eyes. Where did you go, master? I went to Green Hill Road for a walk. Chu Li took a sip of tea. Shui smiled. Green Hill Road? Did you meet the White Shroud Chief? She looked at Chu Li's white robe as she said. Chu Li said, Oh, you've heard of the White Shroud Chief. New Moon Brothel. Shui said, I heard that the White Shroud Chief is very powerful. He kills people like cutting grass. She looked at Chu Li again. When she first heard this news, she vaguely felt that this was her master. Now that she saw Chu Li in a white robe, she was even more suspicious. Chu Li said, Yes, I've heard of him. Master, is that you? Shui quickly said. Chu Li did not deny it and picked up the teacup. Shui quickly raised her hand and made a vow, I will not tell anyone else. All right, it's me. Chu Li put down the teacup and nodded. No wonder. Shui pursed her lips and smiled. Master, did you see Lu Yurong? I heard that Lu Yurong fell in love with the White Shroud Chief at first sight. Yes, I did. Isn't it beautiful? Chu Li laughed. You don't care about the level of her martial arts, but you're fixated on whether she's beautiful or not. Everyone says she's beautiful too. She's not inferior to the second lady. Xueling said, but there are too few people who have seen her, so there's a lot of competition. You really have nothing better to do, Chu Li said snappily. Xueling said, Master, you haven't said whether she's beautiful or not. Kind of. What about compared to second miss? More or less? Who's more beautiful? Everyone has their own merits. It's hard to say. Brother Jiang quite does not lack money. Xueling scoffed. Then let's go see Brother Jiang Kuai. Chu Li said, Do we really have to go? Xueling hesitated. This is quite embarrassing. If Master Xiao Taiying goes, Brother Jiang Kuai will be even more embarrassed. What's so embarrassing about being beaten up because my skills are inferior? Chu Li stood up. He had been beaten up and injured many times. He did not think much of it. All right. Xueling followed him helplessly. In Jiang Kuai's courtyard, the two of them sat in the pagoda. Xueling served them tea and went into the house to chat with Su Yuding. The breeze was gentle. The green bamboos in front of the pagoda rustled. The green was fresh and full of life. Chu Li put down the teacup and sighed. I'm sorry to have implicated Brother Jiang Kuai. The injury on Jiang Kuai's face had recovered. It's my fault for not being as good as him. I did not expect him to dare to hit me. Jiang Kuai waved his hand and smiled bitterly. He came with ill intentions. Chu Li shook his head. Jiang Kuai was stunned. He hesitated. Brother Chu, are you saying that he came for you? Most likely. Chu Li picked up the teacup and took another sip. He smiled. Even if he is not, let him be. Jiang Kuai laughed. It's just a small grudge. There's no need to make a big deal out of it, right? How would Master Xiao Taiying see this? Master Xiao Taiying can't tolerate this. You don't have to worry about this. Chu Li said, Brother Jiang Kuai, I will follow the second lady to the imperial residence of King An. I need someone I can trust to help me. Jiang Kuai pondered for a while and looked into the house. Chu Li laughed. Yes, yes. You have to discuss this with sister-in-law. Listen to her. If I'm alone, I will go with you without hesitation. Jiang Kuai was a little embarrassed. Shuli said, "If Brother Jiang Kuai goes, don't go with him." Jiang Kuai's face turned serious. "It's that dangerous?" Shuli said, "It's always right to think of the worst." "Then I'll go with you." Jiang Kuai said, "I'm worried that Su Yuding will not be used to going there. Since she's staying, it's fine." Shuli clapped and smiled. With Brother Jiang Kuai's help, it couldn't be better. He then chatted with Jiang Kuai for a while. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Lingquan was standing outside. He said that Master Xiao Taiying knew he was back and had already arranged a banquet to welcome him. Shu Li said goodbye to Jiang Kuai and went back to change his clothes. He then went to Iron Eagle Island with Lingquan. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.